Hello, everybody. Welcome. Let's do a little sound check. Let me know how the sound is on X and on YouTube, and we can get started. Check, check. All right, looks like we're fine. Let's do a quick overview of the markets. Nasdaq down 3.4%. It was down as low as 5% in pre-market, and it kind of drifted up a little bit. And I think some people were expecting a little bit of balance here, but that doesn't seem to be coming. And I think this can get worse pretty quickly. Um, but this is a very busy week, lots of earnings, Fed decision, so things can change. But right now, we're going to dig into Nvidia news, but it seems like this is going to continue for a while. The market is being led down by Nvidia, that is down 17% right now. Give me 1 second. All right, I think this should be okay. Nvidia is down 17%. The low of the day was, let's see, $117, I believe. So right now it just dipped below $120. So it's very close to the low of the day. It was 117.26 cents. So Nvidia stock is having a problem, even putting up even a dead cat bounce here, I think. But I'm not a day trader. I'm not a technical analyst. Um, so I'm not making a prediction of what it's going to do in the next day or two. But I don't think the market yet appreciates what DeepSeek means to Nvidia. I think that this is an existential issue for the company, and you know, and I listened to quite a few interviews this morning. I mean, I couldn't sleep last night, to be honest with you. Um, I feel very passionate about the stock market. Ever since I was 15 years old, I've been, um, involved in it in Turkey and the US, etc. And just the kind of the nature of it being there's always something to figure out. Everything's always new. You can't really do controlled studies of it. And it brings together science, math, psychology, and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, so I'm running on low sleep right now. But from a technical analyst perspective, which is how I started at age 15, right now the Nvidia stock is sitting at the 200-day average, which is supposed to be a strong, support resistance level, etc. So we'll see how it trades here. I wouldn't be surprised if it bounced a little bit. I mean, that left a huge gap here in the morning, and gaps are supposed to be filled and everything. So, but who knows? I think fundamentally, the company is in really bad situation. So, and I've been talking about this in this space for the last month or so. And I pinned at the top of our screens a tweet from December 31st, which literally verbatim called what happened. It says DeepSeek showed that copying AI models may be orders of magnitude easier, faster, and cheaper. So companies may reconsider their plans to spend tens of billions of dollars buying NVIDIA GPUs. And I linked to an article from Tom's Hardware. And this tweet was seen a few dozen times before this morning. And now it has 128,000 views on it. This is from December 31st, which is very rare for Twitter, for a tweet from several weeks ago to kind of catch on like this. So that kind of goes to show the level of interest, and people are trying to figure out what's happening. But like I said, I listened to dozens of interviews of Wall Street analysts and the usual talking heads on CNBC, Bloomberg, a lot of tweets from analysts like Dan Ives or Gene Munster or Gavin Baker, and I don't think people appreciate still what DeepSeek means. And there's a lot of people kind of trying to justify in their head what's happening with, they're lying, none of this is true kind of stuff. But I find that really highly unlikely to be true. So, um, and a lot of people are focused on, you know, DeepSeek's chatbot may be better than ChatGPT now, but it's not that much different. Like that's not the point here. The point is not about the chatbot. The point is about um, a Chinese company that is kind of unknown, um, at least in the US, um, that's relatively new with a limited budget, can dethrone ChatGPT, a company like ChatGPT that has been around for a number of years, well known, raised a ton of money from well known names like Microsoft and others. And this just goes to show how fluid the AI landscape is. It's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to figure out who's going to be the leader in the longer term with economic profits and a well return on invested capital. And I mean, we're now finding out that even the people who thought they figured it out are, having to step back. And I've been pointing to several comments from Microsoft over recent months why they will likely be pulling back on their spending for OpenAI. And that's coming to view now, I think. And the reasons behind it, we talked about their cash balance over the last, basically 12 months or so. We've been talking about this, and it just needs one event. Bubbles need one event to kind of pop the bubble. You don't really know what the event is going to be that pops it, but this is a clear bubble on Nvidia stock, and I think there's more room for it to fall. Um, I mean, even as I talk right now, it's kind of 118. And I mean, if this stock doesn't get a bounce from 200-day average, that's going to be that's going to have consequences, I think, for the global financial markets. Because, yeah, anyway, just rattling along right now. Let's see if ACDC wants to come on, or any other questions from Henry. I know he follows this space very well, or anybody else. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak and hop onto the speaker board. Let's have a conversation. Lucia, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was, what does it mean for Tesla? Does it mean that hardware 3
Yeah, we'll get back. We'll get to
awesome.
Tesla. We'll get to.
Okay.
Let's focus on Nvidia right now. There's a lot going on Nvidia right now. We'll get to Tesla and others. ACDC, how are you?
I'm doing well, yeah, man. How are you? Kind of working on a little less sleep myself, so spare my attention span a little bit here. And also, if you don't hear from me, if you're calling on me, it's probably because I got a call in between. But it's been a busy day.
Yeah. Okay. Um, just because of the market volatility or some other reason?
No, entirely because of the markets.
Yeah. So people calling you, asking you what's going on.
No, not really. I I don't have clients that call me because if that's the case, then you don't need me. So it's usually I make the calls on days like this on making certain changes. So we discuss the portfolio, and a lot of times if they can't take the call, they'll be calling me back and stuff. So it's a little bit playing phone tag.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. All right. Grant.
Hey, how's it going? Was curious if you guys had talked about the outlook for Tesla earnings, but also I'm sure you're talking about Nvidia and everything. Congrats on the short there. I'm also curious if you're thinking about closing that.
No, I'm not thinking about closing it. I'm thinking about adding more. um, this is just the beginning. This
That's
stock
risk.
is, yeah.
I
Well,
think it'd be good
life
to
is
close. I
risky.
don't know, man.
Everything's risky. If you don't want risk, don't get out of your house. You know, and LA people will tell you even that's risky these days. Yeah, I mean, I think this, I think this event is existential for NVIDIA. It can be existential. So, um,
I don't know when you got in. I mean, I did close my position a couple weeks ago based on someone that I trust who talks extensively about the semi space. But I don't know. I mean, how far down do you think it's going to go? I feel like I don't know that this is going to reverberate through the purchasing plans the way that people seem to think it might. I actually, I don't know. Like, I might buy if it dips to 100.
okay, great. Well, good luck to you. ACDC, what do you think?
Yeah, so as I'm kind of sifting through all of this, I think NVIDIA is the most troubled company from this. Of course, there's other semis also, like nobody's being spared. But given the multiples and their dependence on these GPUs, I think NVIDIA has a lot to lose. I mean, we don't know yet, what is true in terms of DeepSeek and what's not. People are still kind of deciphering it. People have all sorts. We don't know if they use H100s, the 800s, and how many they used, right? So as people are still deciphering through all of this, market's telling you what it thinks is there. None of the experts have been able to really dispute it to any great length. People have kind of, I think Elon also kind of like chimed in a couple of things. He did a laugh my ass off reply, and then obviously also two short little replies, but nobody's really come out and defended it. So given the forward earnings that are built in for NVIDIA's stock, this could be really detrimental.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we'll get to all those tweets. I mean, we have 2 hours. I can't even do more actually today. So, Lucia, go ahead.
I wanted to say that Elon also, if you want to get to the tweets later, it's okay. But Elon has a more recent tweet where basically confirms what you are saying. And yeah, there is a full analysis he replied to.
What did Elon say?
Well, he said that basically computing has become much cheaper. Computing is not as needed as before, and maybe this will initiate a consumer cycle for new devices, maybe. And there
Yeah,
is a
so
full
he
analysis.
said this in a tweet, in a
No,
reply.
he replied to this tweet with like, "This is the best analysis I have read."
Oh, this is from, well, let's get to that. This is from Gavin Baker. Okay. So, yeah, I couldn't read that earlier in full, but I kind of got the gist of it. Let's kind of dig into it in detail here. And if I can find it. So Gavin S. Is Gavin S. Baker. There we go. Interesting analysis. Best I've seen. AJ will be everywhere. I don't know what AJ means. I guess he meant AI and press J instead. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't see a tweet that says from him that says compute is not as needed. Maybe somebody tagged me onto it. Let's see. No.
It's in the analysis of Gavin Baker.
You're talking Gavin Baker said that. Okay, you got to be very clear on who said what. Okay. All right, let's see. DeepSeek R1. ACDC, did you have something to say?
No, go ahead. I was just gonna read my best line from it, but go ahead if you're gonna dive into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to. I also want to make sure that YouTube can read it. Let me just give me 1 second. So I'll pin it up here, Gavin's tweet, and then we're going to read through this, and I'm going to show on YouTube as well.
And just my quick take on that. So Gavin waited for the whole weekend. I was actually like,
Yeah,
going on his feed.
He didn't say anything.
He didn't say
I
anything.
asked him
He
the question,
digested
their
it
question
all.
too. What's there to
And
digest?
well, I think he still wanted to take everything here, some of the experts and whatnot, and then finally he came out with this, and it's really good how he's
Yeah,
put
but
it. So
you can't fucking say it after the stock drops 20%. It's
no, no, he said
valuable
it.
when
He
you
said
say it
it.
before.
He said it much earlier. This is before the market
9:54
opened.
a.m. No, it's not 9:54 a.m. 25 minutes into it, and several hours of pre-market. So
This may
13,
this
14,
may be
15%
edited.
jump.
I'll look at what I'm referring to because he definitely put something out way before the market opened.
Well, it's at the top. What I'm referring to is at the top. So let's see. Anyway, it doesn't matter. 20%. I mean, 10 minutes, whatever. But anyway, DeepSeek R1 is real with important nuances. Most important is the fact that R1 is so much cheaper and more efficient to inference than O1, not from the 6 million training figure. And this is exactly true. Like when I listen to these interviews, they're all talking about the training cost, but that's not really what's important here. It's the inference cost being so cheap, so much cheaper. That's important, as Gavin says. I mean, both are important, but one's more important than the other. And then sometimes people, compare, like on these interviews on Talking Heads, they compare like the infrastructure cost versus the training cost versus like they kind of compare apples to oranges. Anyway, let's keep on. R1 costs 93% less to use than O1 per each API. Exactly. Can be run locally on a high-end workstation and does not seem to have hit any rate limits, which is wild. Simple math is that every 1 billion active parameters requires 1 gigabyte of RAM in FP8, floating point 8. So R1 requires 37 gigabytes of RAM. Batching massively lowers costs and more compute increases tokens per second, so still advantages to inference in the cloud. We'll also note that there are true geopolitical dynamics at play here, and I don't think it is a coincidence that this came out right after Stargate. RIP $500 billion, we hardly even knew you. So there you go. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. But the problem here is, okay, let's put a caveat to this. He was on All In Podcast talking about how it's going to be so great for NVIDIA and everybody else. All right. That was a couple of weeks ago. So, next paragraph. Real. One, was the number one download in the relevant App Store category. Obviously, the ChatGPT, something neither Gemini nor Claude was able to accomplish. Two, it is comparable to O1 from a quality perspective, although lags O3. Three, there were real algorithmic breakthroughs, which is what we've been talking about, that led to it being dramatically more efficient both to train and inference. Training in floating point 8, MLA, and multi-token prediction are significant. 4, it is easy to verify that the R1 training run only costs $6 million. While this is literally true, it is also deeply misleading. 5, even their hardware architecture is novel, and I will note that they use PCI Express for scale up. I don't know what the last part means. Nuance. 1, the $6 million does not include costs associated with prior research and ablation experiments on architectures, algorithms, and data per the technical paper. Okay. Other than that, this means that it is possible to train an R1 quality model with $6 million run if a lab has already spent hundreds of millions of dollars on prior research and has access to much larger clusters. Okay. DeepSeek obviously has way more than 2048 H800s. See, this is what I don't understand. Like Elon said obviously too, and I don't know what kind of says obviously. Like nobody has indicated, nobody has explained right now or supported that word obviously. What makes it so obvious that they actually have more than H800s? Even the guy that everybody's quoting, the Scale AI CEO, I guess the youngest billionaire ever, on the CNBC interview at Davos, when he said it, he said, "My understanding is that." So that's not the same confidence level statement as a lot of people are when they quote him. They say, that Chinese company had access to H100s. Okay, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We don't know. It's really not that important anyway. But um, um, I think we should kind of pay attention to what speculation was fact here. Deep, Lucia, go ahead.
I think the hedge fund that owns them has more GPUs, and people are referring to them like they could use those GPUs.
Okay. I mean, the most important part here is the algorithmic breakthroughs coming out of China. So, all right. Let's see, where were we at? DeepSeek obviously has way more than 2048 H800s. One of their earlier papers referenced a cluster of 10,000 A100s, which is again, that's still worse than H100s, generation worse. An equivalent smart team can spin up a 2000 GPU cluster and train R1 from scratch with $6 million. Roughly 20% NVIDIA's revenue goes through Singapore. 20% NVIDIA's GPUs are probably not in Singapore, despite their best efforts. Two, there's a lot of distillation, i.e., it is unlikely they could have trained this without unhindered access to GPT-4o and o1. As Brad Gerster pointed out to him yesterday, kind of funny to restrict access to leading edge GPUs and not do anything about China's ability to distill leading edge American models. Obviously defeats the purpose of the export restrictions. Why buy the cow when you can't get the milk for free? Conclusions. Two. That's a reply to the tweet at the time. One, lowering the cost to train will increase the ROI on AI. Two, there is no world where this is positive for training capex or the power theme in the near term. Power meaning the utilities. Yeah, so that's why that number two right there is the I think critical sentence for NVIDIA. That explains why NVIDIA is down. And I don't know if he says anything specific about NVIDIA. He's an NVIDIA investor because I know he was invested in NVIDIA before. So let's continue. Three, the biggest risk to the current AI infrastructure winners across tech, industrials, utilities, and energy is that distilled version of R1 can be run locally at the edge on a high-end workstation. Someone referenced a Mac Studio Pro. That means that a similar model will run on a superphone in about 2 years. If inference moves to the edge because it is good enough, we are living in a very different world with very different winners, i.e., the biggest PC and smartphone upgrade cycle we have ever seen. So maybe that's why Apple is going up a little bit today. My interpretation of it was a little different. Apple is up 4% today, obviously partly because it's been down so much, like 15% in the last month or so. And from the peak to trough, yeah, we're talking about 50% drop. So, and then secondly, I think we've seen a bit of a flight to safety type of trade. So all the Mac 7s are out. Apple has majority of its total assets in cash and cash equivalents. We're also seeing consumer defenses like Walmart, Costco, Procter and Gamble up, healthcare up, oil down, and yields are down 10 basis points. So, that could be part of the reason why Apple's up as well. So, um, so I don't necessarily agree with him on that last sentence right there, which is, let's see, if inference moves to the edge because it is good enough, we are living in a very different world with very different winners, i.e., the biggest PC and smartphone upgrade cycle we've ever seen. Okay. Compute has oscillated between centralization and decentralization for a long time. Okay. Four, ASI is really, really close, and no one really knows what economic returns to superintelligence will be. If a $100 billion reasoning model trained on 100,000 plus Blackwells, O5, Gemini 3, Grok 4, is curing cancer and inventing warp drives, then the returns to ASI will be really high, and training capex and power consumption will steadily grow. Yeah, those are assumptions. They're not facts. Dyson spheres will be back to be a best explanation for Fermi's paradox. I hope the returns to ASI are high, would be so awesome. Okay. 5, this is all really good for the companies that use AI, software, internet, etc. Okay. 6, from an economic perspective, this massively increased the value of distribution and unique data. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. 7, American labs are likely to stop releasing their leading edge models to prevent the distillation that was so essential for R1, although the cat may already be entirely out of the bag on this front, i.e., R1 may be enough to train R2, etc. Grok 3 looms large and might significantly impact the above conclusions. He's a big fan of Grok, obviously, very close to Elon, and a few other people that are very close to Elon. So I think he's invested in XAI. So I would take that statement with a grain of salt. But Grok 3 looms large and might significantly impact the above conclusions. This will be the first significant test of scaling laws for pre-training, arguably since GPT-4. In the same way that it took several weeks to turn V3 into R1 via reinforcement learning, it will likely take several weeks to run the reinforcement learning RL necessary to improve Grok 3's reasoning capabilities. The better the base model, the better the reason model should be, as the 3 scaling laws are multiplicative. Pre-training, RL during post-training, and test time compute during inference. A function of the RL. Grok 3 has already shown it can do tasks beyond O1, see the Tesseract demo. How far beyond is going to be important. To paraphrase an unanimous orc from the Two Towers, meat might be back on the menu very shortly. Time will tell, and when the facts change, I change my mind. Okay, so did you sell your NVIDIA? Does that mean you sold your NVIDIA investment? We don't have an answer to that. Yeah, that's all we got. All right. Oh, Jimmy is here. ACDC, any thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in there. In fact, I mean, do you want to take a minute to kind of unpack some of the things that he says in
Yeah.
it? To me, that statement, that why buy the cow when the milk is free kind of like sums everything up. And the cow is NVIDIA in this case. But he also talks about, you know, the distillation process, and then also bifurcating the whole LLM model too. So, I mean, to me as a layman, what it tells me is that all of these big, huge models will not be used as they currently are. There will be submodels that will branch off of them and then go into specific industries for specific use. So if you're trying to find a cancer drug research, you don't need that model to also tell you who the president of the United States is currently. Is that what you're kind of taking away from this?
I'm younger than you by a few years, and I did not get any sleep, so I really need the question to be 10 words or fewer today.
What do you take away from his, like a couple bullet points from his?
I mean, I don't think there's anything new here that we haven't discussed. I don't think there's anything he has a lot more technical knowledge because he's got decades of experience investing in these things, and very successful portfolio manager at Fidelity. And he looks at these things way more detail, many layers deeper than I do. But I think the gist of it is basically what we've been discussing for months here. So I think what I would caution here is I think in a couple of the sentences he kind of assumes something will happen, but I don't think that's necessarily true. And like for example, like what I see here a lot of times here, like when Microsoft's CEO said the same thing, you know, this will increase demand for GPUs. Some people say, and I don't think like maybe that's probably true in the longer term, but in the near term, that's not necessarily true. You know, you still have to kind of go through this period of um, people, realizing this is what they can do, um, and then see if the innovations that came from DeepSeek is applicable to their um, businesses. And then there's going to be back and forth, try and failure. This is going to take many years. But in the meantime, it's clear to me that there is an overbuilding of infrastructure. So, um, yeah, I didn't see anything here that's like it's good that he agrees though. So, for example, he says from an economic perspective, he just massively increases value of distribution and unique data: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. I think that's a potential outcome. I don't think that's necessarily true though.
Well, that depends on specific use and what models you're training. So
Right.
yes, and then comes in the whole conversation about synthetic
And
data
then like
also.
he says, for example, if $100 billion reasoning model trained on 100K plus Blackwells is curing cancer, inventing warp drives, and the returns to ASI will be really high. I don't think that's necessarily true either. Like it depends if somebody's doing it and others can't. But if they all can't do it, and it's basically the same thing, like we're seeing with these chatbots, then how is the return really high? So um, I think this is the kind of thinking that ended up with NVIDIA being a $3.5 trillion company when it shouldn't have been. Jimmy?
Yes. Look, I've done a lot of thinking today. We had that conversation 5 days ago, and we had a conversation. And it turned out I was wrong about everything, and it turned out that not only was I wrong, that what I expected might have occurred if we didn't do something has, to an extent, already happened, despite us trying to stop it. And it turns out that NVIDIA is powerless to do anything, and it is truly worthless now because everything has shown that maybe NVIDIA isn't having the special sauce that we thought would just single-handedly make us ahead of all of our opponents. And it turns out that everyone who thought NVIDIA was overvaluing everything else, well, turns out Emperor has no clothes. And now all these so-called NVIDIA investors look ridiculous for the first time in years. And they can't explain very persuasively why they're still correct about the stock being worth more, right? So I would say this. Not only was I wrong, not only do I have no idea how this occurred, because we should have known about it. There was a little bit of evidence about this DeepSeek for a few days. I think the earliest tweet I heard was when they released their paper and people were speaking up about how good of an interesting paper it came, but didn't really say anything about DeepSeek itself. And now it turns out that OpenAI doesn't have a response to it because Operator came out the same time as this thing. And Sam Altman looks like kind of ridiculous. So we have no answer, and I feel stupid. I have to admit, for the first time in my life, I am speechless. I was wrong.
All right.
I gave everyone bad advice.
Okay. Nobody's perfect. I saw a other book the other day, made me think of you.
Thank you.
I was gonna take a
So,
picture.
can I ask you very quickly, now that you are in the money, do you think that this is a gradual realization by the American investor sentiment that this is a real thing, or do you think it's gradually going to show up on CNBC like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And it might take a few months to figure out this is a real changing point in American history.
I never said how I shorted Nvidia, whether puts or straight stock or any other way. And there's like dozens of ways you can bet against the company. And so you're putting words in my mouth. I don't appreciate that. So we're gonna move on to Luce. Luce?
I think X is bugged because my hand is not up.
Okay.
Yaman,
ACDC? Yeah.
would you agree the best salesman of the year award goes to Jessen?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? The guy was signing boobs. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, also, like, what was also amazing is that every CEO was sucking up to him and kind of going along with the story. And by the way, like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, tomorrow, this can bounce 20%. Who knows? All right. So, only time will tell. I feel confident in my thesis, but ready to be proven wrong. So,
Well, I would say that for a few minutes in the morning, it looked like perhaps it could. There were some people coming on and trying to defend it on the news on CNBC.
so many people came out, so
Right.
many people, and every single analyst was. I mean, Dan Ives, Gene Munster. Let's go to their tweets. We can discuss that. But I mean, how do you look at the stock and not question yourself? You're down 20%, dude. How do you not question your thesis? At least have the humility to say, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So we're gonna finish.
Yeah, neither of them could actually defend it with any decent argument. And the market has spoken, basically. If there was something, if there were holes in the story by now, the market would have found them. And I don't think this is any longer, a pre-market panic sell and then a bounce back up. I think the whole AI sector will have to be repriced after this.
Yeah, we'll see. How far do you think Nvidia can fall here?
Well, can I answer that?
No, ACDC.
It's hard to tell, so I haven't, looked at the exact estimates for Nvidia and stuff. I mean, if you look at the stock right now, right, it would look attractive, trading at 40 times current earnings, 40 times something next future earnings and stuff. But as soon as that backlog goes away and everything, this is trading at 80 times, 100 times, 200 times future earnings. So now you sort of reprice it with all the other semiconductor stocks, reasonable semiconductor stocks, and this could very easily go below $100, $50. I mean, there's literally you don't know what the downside of this stock is right now.
Yeah, I think so too. Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, looking at a list of stocks that just happen to have these like 1-2 day drops followed by decline, I mean, it's pretty telling. But the question is, what is the long-term plan for NVIDIA? Because he's going to have to respond. I think this is something we haven't talked about yet. What will he say? He hasn't really made a public announcement about their plan. So, for example, Meta had a significant drop when the announcement about cookies came out. Remember that a few years ago about the cookies? And Apple's basically saying we're going to do this and that. And Meta was like, well, okay, we're going to try our best to build around that. And its stock has rebounded. And the main reason why is he focused more on the actual profit. He reduced headcount. He was aggressive with internal marketing, and he fired Sheryl Sandberg. So they did a few things. But NVIDIA isn't facing any questions about if it's too fat. It needs to become more efficient and streamline itself. I don't think those announcements are going to work. Maybe he's going to announce something with Donald Trump, something big, but he's also done a lot of those. I'm just trying to think in my head right now. If I was him, what would I do to quash public fears? Because this is now rising fear about basically being lied to. That Nvidia, which had been hyping itself up, as you said, as something extremely special. Now, if you look at these major stock declines, I mean, Netflix had its one-day major stock decline one time. So did Amazon twice, late '90s, mid 2000s, and both times they rebounded through steady sales, good leadership from the top, and basically fulfilling their promises. So the question to the audience and the speaker panel should be: what promises do you think he can keep?
Okay, Grant.
I was just gonna say, I don't know. I mean, $50 a share, like that's never going to happen in my mind. There are going to be people buying at 100. I haven't heard much from the people who are signed up to spend a bunch of money with Nvidia that they're actually going to cut back. Like, I don't know that the incentive structure is really in place for Microsoft or any of these hyperscalers to like dramatically cut back on their plans as they exist. I think you saw Satya already say like, "Oh, Jevons paradox." I don't think it's quite as gloom and doom as people are making it out to be here.
Okay. ACDC.
So my question to that would be Microsoft, who announced 80 billion, Meta announced 65 billion. And what do you think they will do after finding this out? First of all, this just kind of came out, so they're just still digesting it, and that's why they haven't come out and said anything opposing it. But do you think they're going to continue their orders with those GPUs and the
No,
Blackwells when they don't
no,
need them? Or are they going to
no.
go back to their engineers and say, hey, this is what we need you to do? Dust off the H800s, in fact, bring them back out. We're going to cancel our CapEx commitment here, and that's how they're going to proceed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like these are CEOs. Like, what the fuck do you expect them to say? Don't buy us stock. We're gonna go down. Grant.
Hey, I think I missed some because you
Yeah,
managed kicking
Grant.
me off after every
Grant.
time I speak.
You're
But
limited to asking questions from now on.
oh
Do you have a
well,
question?
they're not going to change their plans.
Okay. So you can leave the space. So let's block him too while at it. All right. I mean, the fact is they're already changing their plans, and we talked about this for several months, and I'll give you one example of it. Microsoft data center, I think it was Wyoming. January 7th, Microsoft pauses construction on $3.3 billion data center expected to be used by ChatGPT. Parents OpenAI for massive supercomputer. So to say that these people will not change their plans when there's evidence that they already are is just asinine. And this is why some people are just not allowed on the speaker board. And actually, they made a comment in this article, a very specific comment that is important, I think. Let me just treat fire here. Quote, this is a Microsoft spokesperson from a publication. We have paused early construction work for the second phase while we evaluate scope and recent changes in technology and consider how this might impact the design of our facilities. So, and what other signal do you need? January 7th. I mean, if they're pausing construction plans on the data center, what are they going to do with the GPUs? Put it up, anyway. All right, ACD, so let's talk a little about, so why don't we make a prediction of what's going to happen next and then move on to other stocks impacted by this news? What do you think will happen next to NVIDIA stock?
I think it'll continue to trail down. Unless of course, like I said, like this whole deep seek thing, unless somebody can come out and prove that no, they use 50,000 H100s, and even then the results and everything are still not at par. That's the only thing that can save it, and nobody's really come out and defended that yet. So I think Nvidia kind of trades bounces around a little bit here and there, but as more and more news kind of solidifies this, the stock just keeps kind of trending down. Many people will try to buy the dip, because buying the dip has worked over the last couple of years. But in my opinion, I think Nvidia keeps trading down
I agree.
over the year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's really amazing how one-sided this stock has been over the last, especially last year, but the year before that too. And after today's news and price action, no bull has changed their view on the company. I was hoping maybe Gavin Baker would have said something like, I guess he doesn't have to, but even he didn't say anything. And all the sell side analysts are very adamant about, defending Nvidia on TV right now. I want to look at let's see. Man, volume is 600 million shares traded already on Nvidia. Average volume is 200 million. Average daily volume. So we're like another 2 hours to go, and already tripled average daily volume. Amazing. Incredible.
It's a lot of shorts being liquidated. Sorry, a lot of longs being liquidated. Sorry.
And there's a lot of leverage in this stock for sure. Um,
Have you seen the talk on WeChat and Redbook and others about what's going on?
no. Hold on. I want to look up ACDC. Go ahead.
So yeah, I'm trying to comb through some of the headlines, and like you were talking about, sell side analysts and some of these featured speakers. They're all saying that on CNBC and everything, and these are people who actually hold the stock themselves. But I haven't seen any analysts really put out a research report with anything defending the stock, saying how this isn't true, or Nvidia's case of still needing their GPUs. So it's not looking good to me. I'm trying to find something good. I'm trying to find, something that doesn't rock the markets anymore, but I just can't find it.
Okay. Ken asks, so does the target investment go from 500 billion to 50 million? I don't know. I don't think anyone thought they were going to spend 500 billion anyway. All right. Gene Monster. Oh, actually, Breton Long just tagged me on Andre Carpet's tweets. Let's read that real quick. Oh my gosh, I know the long one. Andre Carpet says, I don't have too much to add on top of this earlier post on V3, and I think it applies to R1 too, which is more recent, thinking equivalent. I will say that deep learning has a legendary, ravenous appetite for compute like no other algorithm that has ever been developed in AI. You may not always be utilizing it fully, but I would never bet against compute as the upper bound for achievable intelligence in the long run. Not just for an individual final training run, but also for the entire innovation experimentation engine that silently underlies all the algorithmic innovations. Data has historically been seen as a separate category from compute, but even data is downstream of compute to a larger extent. You can spend compute to create data, tons of them. You've heard this called synthetic data generation, but less obviously, there's a very deep connection, equivalence even, between synthetic data generation and reinforcement learning. In the trial and error learning process in RL, the trial is model generating synthetic data, which it then learns from based on the error reward. Conversely, when you generate synthetic data and then rank or filter it in any way, your filter is straight up equivalent to a 0-1 advantage function. Congrats, you're doing crap. Last thought, not sure if this is obvious. There are two major types of learning in both children and deep learning. There is one, imitation learning, watch and repeat. Two, trial and error learning, reinforcement learning. My favorite simple example is AlphaGo. Is there anything useful here? I'm just going to skim this on my own real quick. Yeah, I don't think there's anything new here. All right, let's go to Gene Monster. Gene Monster has investments across the industry, including NVIDIA. He says, I believe the market is overreacting to DeepSeek's success because despite any architectural breakthrough, the need for AI infrastructure is continuing at a higher rate than most investors anticipate. Most likely, well, that can't possibly be true, then you just stuck with NVIDIA. Anyway, most likely the DeepSeek breakthrough represents some step forward in chip architecture. It's unclear if it's a 5% or 500% improvement. What's being missed today is if there is a more efficient way to train models. It could increase the level of investment to build AI infrastructure, given the prospects of reaching AGI are more achievable. I don't think that's necessarily true. The bad news is the market will remain on edge until at least Wednesday afternoon when Microsoft, Meta, and Tesla report earnings. Commentary about model training costs will clearly be the A topic. Separately, we'll have to wait 21 trading days until NVIDIA reports their earnings on February 26th. Reminder, this year I expect a couple 10% pullbacks in NASDAQ, which is a similar dynamic that the market experienced during the dot-com run. These pullbacks can be healthy given they shake out nervous investors. Interesting. Okay. I believe the demand for best AI hardware will persist, Gene Monster says. Hyperscalers, enterprises, and sovereign entities are not looking for a cheaper way to achieve AGI. They're looking for a faster way to get there. DeepSeek doesn't alter that dynamic. Spoiler alert, these DeepSeek moments will continue to happen and it's the more efficient models rolling out over the next several years. We see these developments reflected in our venture businesses. Okay.
So Yaman, that last statement that he just made, right, that you just read out right now, that's also a wake up moment here too. It's not just about deep seek, but somebody basically found a better mousetrap and showed that many other people can do the same, and that's what should be explored. So this is what the market is going to analyze here. And the reason why nobody's speaking up is because nobody can question that yes, we could have done this more efficiently.
Jimmy?
Oh, I just wanted to add, these guys, the 30 academic authors behind that paper, are all going to get medals. They're currently the talk of the news in China.
Jimmy, your sound quality is really bad. Lucha?
It's yet to be seen if they can really make, and I don't know, maybe if they can really cure cancer or do anything like that with the AI. It's pure speculation.
Lucha, that's the same speculation there is with any other model too. But the fact that this model is cheaper, more efficient, and can be used to develop those models, that speaks highly of it, and that's what the market is saying basically.
ACDC, have you made any changes to your portfolio today after this, saga?
Yeah, so usually I don't like to act on days like this. I like to let the news simmer in and stuff, even though you may miss the absolute bottom or something, which I think is almost impossible to act upon. But I did make some changes. So, and this is where I always talk about like having a diversified portfolio so that at times like this, you can actually move assets, along. So I sold some on the healthcare side, a couple stocks that had run up anywhere from 20 to 25%. In the last 6 months, I took some profit on that. And there's two names. And once again, this is not financial advice for anyone because what I do for my clients is completely different. They have completely different time horizons and risk tolerances than anybody may have. But there's only two names that I really did purchase today. One was Kinder Morgan, that is down about 10% today itself. This is your natural gas pipeline. they've got hit along with the entire energy sector, the entire utility sector. I think this sector has more merits to it apart from just, power generation for AI needs itself. So I picked that up, gives a 4% dividend, which I'm always good to collect on stocks or happy to collect on stocks. And the other one that I took a little risky bet on today, but I think it merits is Oracle. So Oracle has been dragged down along with a lot of these companies, but I think Oracle is actually positioned slightly differently. If you look at using Gavin Baker's example of why would you buy the cow when the milk is free? Well, the profit now is going to go towards, or the attention now is going to go towards the companies that can use the milk and derive products from that milk, right? So who's got the best cheese? That's why you're seeing companies like Meta today actually up. Amazon, not down that much, hardly down, and such. CRM, I think it was up quite a bit today. In fact, wow, yeah, it's up almost 5% today. Okay. So these are the companies that will use the milk, so as to say, and derive better products with it. And for them, the milk basically, that, like he said, the milk just got free, or in a sense to say cheaper. Okay. Oracle, I think, is in a lot of different plays, but I think Oracle has a huge advantage of their database network, and they have a lot of enterprise software. And Oracle's been kind of going into the agentic AI, which is one of the products derived from Milk, let's just say, and it will be able to implement that agentic software much cheaper onto their databases already existing in enterprise. So that's a core part of their business, which will still exist. And the additional upside to me is if this Stargate comes to fruition, they're involved in that, and if the TikTok purchase goes through, they'll get a big bonus from that. So that's the one I took a little bit of a risky bet on, but those are the only two things that I bought.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I don't know Oracle very well, honestly, but they're down 15% today. Um, looks like they benefited handsomely in terms of stock return from the AI bubble. But yeah, I hope it works out for you. I don't know the company very well, so I can't really say much there. And
So they did get carried away, Yaman, a little bit
Mhm.
because of their hyperscaling side of the business also. But I think a lot of the core businesses that they have in the enterprise software kind of like make it a little bit sturdier. Okay. So it kind of plays on to what they may lose on that side, they can profit on this side. And I'm literally not even adding the Stargate and the TikTok are just two wild cards that
But
could happen.
why not wait until this shakeoff kind of plays out over, probably a month or two, a couple of months, who knows, and then buy Oracle, because Oracle is going to get. It looks, I mean, at least the chart looks like one of those companies that's going to get thrown out with the water.
Right. And that's exactly what I said, that this is my risky play. This, I think, is a company that's been a little unjustly oversold along with it. So I could be wrong in this. Maybe the market knows better, but sometimes you have to make a aggressive play, and that's the play that I'm making on this.
Okay. What percent of your portfolio would you mind sharing at all, or no?
Oh, it's no more than 2%, 3% in
Okay.
a portfolio. That's it.
Okay, cool. Maybe we can take a deeper look next time into the company. Just before I go to Steven, and also on the energy one, you said Kinder Morgan pipeline, natural gas pipeline company. I don't know the company very well. I think, like you said, you like dividends. Obviously, midstream is the place to be if you want dividends. But it's amazing that crude oil is at 72 right now. You know? It's
Yeah,
really
man.
amazing that energy prices are coming off so fast today. Like if this idea of, which I don't buy into, this idea of that DeepSeek news is good for inference, that it's going to make things cheaper, and they have a name for it too. Satya tweeted about it. It's going to be good for, it's going to make cheaper, inference cheaper. So, we're going to have more use cases, and that's going to increase demand for GPUs and everything. That's all great, but that's going to take a long time, I think. I don't think it's going to happen very fast. And in the meantime, oil prices coming down so fast, I think is indicative of something that people aren't thinking about. What do you think, ACDC, on that front?
Yeah, I cannot even attach oil prices to this, but some of the other infrastructure plays attached to the energy side, it's unbelievable. You look at Vertiv Holdings, that thing is down 31% today on this news. Look at a company like on the industrial side, like GE Veranova.
Siemens Energy is down like 20%. Or it was in the morning. So a
Right.
lot of energy plays are down, especially if they had got a tailwind from the AI bubble. They're down really significantly. But oil
Right.
prices are a different animal. So why are oil prices coming down from 82, 83 to now 72 in a matter of a couple of days? That's insane, don't you think?
I think honestly, oil has other macros attached to it. Energy, definitely, though, I can understand. But once again, some of these high flying companies, which were maybe building out specifically, like Vertiv Holdings, catering to the infrastructure and the data centers and the hyperclusters, they'll definitely get hit. And that's why the stock is down 30%. But once again, that's where you have to kind of like sift through and find the diamonds in the rough, because there's some companies like my case for Kinder Morgan. I mean, it's natural gas wasn't entirely for this. And I think with the new administration, a lot of easing of regulations on the pipelines and everything, their business profits in a lot of other ways apart from just the AI play.
Yeah. Hold on. I have a new subscriber. Thank you, Chris James. Welcome to the speaker board.
Hey, great to be here. The other company I was thinking of was NewScale. They're down like 30% today. That's all I have to add for now.
Thanks, Chris. Chris, what made you subscribe today?
Yeah, great question. I actually was subscribed to you on Patreon like 7 years ago, and I remember you wrote a piece called Tesla Demand Levers, and that helped me go all in on the stock in 2019. And then recently been really enjoying your X Spaces calls, and you've influenced some of my recent investment decisions.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And as a subscriber, you can always, I'll see your notifications right away because I check the subscriber tab. So any questions, just let me know. ACDC and Stephen.
If you don't mind, I just want to ask Chris a question. Chris, so when you say Yaman helped you with your decisions, was he able to help you make some buy decisions and also some sell decisions recently?
Yeah, I recently sold 75% of my Tesla shares, and now it's sitting in cash at 4.1%.
Wow.
And now
Wow.
I actually opening a short position on Carvana. I actually really enjoyed that story from Hindenburg. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, Chris, I commend you for putting all biases and attachments aside and having an open mind and listening to the factual conversation. So definitely commend you for that.
Chris, well, good luck. I hope those trades work out for you, and I'll try to be, less wrong going forward. Thank you. Steven.
Hey, Iman, just a quick question. So does this change the value of an H100 NVIDIA chip now or in the near future? Or if you covered this already, I apologize. But I bring this up because, in terms of valuation, I know, is it going to change the valuation of XAI? Like, is their data center not as important now in the whole scope of the AI game or the AI race?
Yeah, great question. I do think it changed the value of the H100, of course, or H200 or Blackwell in the future, etc. So it really changed the game, I think. So I don't know XAI very well. It's a private company. I'm not privy to much of the information, obviously, but I've tested all, major ones: Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok over the last year plus. So there's a lot riding on Grok 3, a lot riding on Grok 3. And the fact is, even though these CEOs are out there talking about how much money they're going to spend and everything on CapEx still, as if, it's still, business as usual. The fact is they're changing their actions. Look at their actions. Like Microsoft is pulling back on data center build out. They're slowing down phase 2. I just read earlier on the January 7 article. So that's one example. ChatGPT, OpenAI, Sam Altman is making O3 Mini free. I don't think that was in the cards before DeepSeek came out. So that's another major strategy change. And we're also seeing some delays in the release of these models too, because they're looking at these models that are coming out and they're like, well, we can't release what we have now because it's going to be worse and we're not going to be able to ride the hype. Like we can't release a second best, a third best. But can you imagine if ChatGPT O3 came out, or next version, whatever it is, came out and it's worse than DeepSeek's R1 or R2, whatever at that time? So right now they can say, oh, just wait until what we release next. You're gonna love it, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think just the fact that he made O3 Mini free for everyone, you don't have to sign up for a subscription, tells you exactly that's a very strong evidence that supports my view that these AI models, although they're great and great service to humanity, and I can imagine doing without them already. In the longer term, I think the ability to charge economic profits it may not be there. So that means, combined with the fact that you have to spend tens of billions of dollars to even get there, like Microsoft did, and other companies that are now building their ASICs, like Google did, Amazon is doing as well, Meta is as well, and then end up with I think more likely than not, zero return on your investment is a stunning realization that the market is now kind of seeing and selling Nvidia. I think that's what's happening, but you don't really know exactly what's happening with these things. You can never really be sure, even after the fact. Steven?
Just to follow up to that, sir, the other thing with the models I think that's worth noting is the predictability of them. I mean, when they don't allow something, that you'll always get that response from the model. When they put out these new models, those features that they talk about are there and working well. So I guess my point is with that, sir, it seems like these models that they're releasing, they are predictable and they're able to determine what they're going to do, whereas other companies that might be in the FSD department claim that they don't know what the models are going to do. So there's a huge difference there. You know what I'm saying? In terms of how they know what the model is going to do next, where it seems like OpenAI and them know, where others not so much.
Okay. I see Wes in the crowd. If he wants to come up, he's welcome to join. I would love to have his view on what's going on with Nvidia stock today. ACDC?
That's exactly what I was just going to suggest. I had a question for Wes, and if he's able to come up, I wanted to ask. I guess I'll wait till he comes up, if he can.
All right. What's your question?
Well, my question was, one of the things that I read was that they were also able to make it more efficient by changing the reward model. So, and it seemed so simple as to what they did in terms of the changes. So I just wanted to get Wes's technical take on that.
Hey, can you ask it
Hi,
again? I as I came up, the audio stream is delayed.
What's your takeaways from the innovations from DeepSeek, and especially around changing of the reward model?
Yeah, it's amazing what they've done. If it all proves to be real, and Hugging Face is doing a test right now to see if they can replicate the results and see how much it costs to train, or sorry, to both train and run inference. So just to be clear, like it's both. You need to do both. So I'm very curious to see that result. I hope that comes out before a week elapses. So that'll be really interesting, and then it'll be very interesting to see what OpenAI's response is when they release O3, and what exactly that's going to look like. So Operator has largely been not great so far. It hasn't yielded any fruit for me, nor any other folks that are trying to use it. The reward model, are you specifically referring to how DeepSeek used reinforcement learning to train its model? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if you've seen, like, read through the paper. They kind of do this in like 4 different steps, by like establishing a base and then using that base to kind of supervise over a reinforcement learning layer that effectively like fine tunes without traditional fine tuning methods, and then you kind of get to this next stage where it is able to more evaluate in a more fine-tuned sense how it comes to these particular solutions that establish a higher result on important benchmarks. So my thought is that it might be more tuned to benchmarks than it should be. So that's the only thing that I'm a little concerned about, is that it's more focused on hitting higher scores on benchmarks rather than just being something that is truly functional, something that you can truly use, which is great in its own respects, but OpenAI would still have kind of the lead on like the usefulness of a model, kind of for actual like doing AI labor. So I'm still curious to see if somebody's actually using DeepSeek in the real world to actual solve problems. So the reward model and training is unique and interesting and is largely state of the art, I would say, right now, as Hugging Face like tries to prove that it can actually work. They can reproduce the results, which they should be able to. Like the paper looks pretty straightforward. So it just takes a lot of money and time to make those implements.
Okay.
So that they should be able to do that.
Wes, are you adding to your NVIDIA shares?
No, I'm not. I'm pretty comfortable with my investment right now.
So you're not selling either. You're not making any changes to it.
No, I nothing has changed. I'm going on the principle that if something radical happens to improve efficiency in compute at pre-train or post-train time, that's only going to increase the demand overall in the short and medium term. So I'm not changing my investment.
Okay. If you didn't own NVIDIA shares today, would you buy today?
Well, 100%. Yeah.
What about on Friday?
Yeah, totally. No, I look at this in terms of like, do I think that NVIDIA is powering the future for the near and medium and long term? And the answers to all those questions are still yes. Like Intel is not in the game.
What did you think of AMD's announcement about the one that we mentioned on Friday?
Yeah, I read through that, and they largely it looks like they brute forced the inference paper. So they did it on their own. They had help from some folks at DeepSeek, but they kind of brute forced it. So inference is largely, pretty straightforward to run on, even though it was trained on NVIDIA, that you can run it on AMD because it's not as logic driven. It's more just, forward pass inference. It's very lightweight to get it to run in inference on a different, you could do it on CPU if you wanted to, as Intel tries to show when they run MLPerf. It's not that hard. So I want to see large scale AMD inference on AI. If I see that, then it's a different story. I might think about investing in AMD, but right now that's not happening.
Okay. Luce and then Meta.
So I had a question for Wes. Do you think there are going to be breakthrough? There have been breakthrough that will exponentially exponentially sorry, I will ask it later. Sorry.
Okay. Meta, welcome. How are you?
Good. How's my reception? I'm traveling at the
Good.
moment, so
It's good. Did you close out your call spread?
yeah, it fell down to 4 cents in value.
No
So
way. Are you
I tried.
serious?
I tried to close it. Yeah, I don't know if it actually closed yet. I'll double check. But yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
basically 100% return on my position.
That's great. Okay, so you basically, there's a very little left potential return wise, so you close it out, and if it
Yeah,
bounces,
it's like
you'll do it again.
yeah. I mean, I was doing it where I was like constantly pushing it forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, we lost Meta. I think he might have gotten a call or something. I want to see if Meta and Wes can maybe discuss. Oh, maybe he'll be back. So
That'd be
So
great.
Wes,
I hope he
yeah,
comes back.
yeah. So Wes is just not swayed at all from this news or the 20% drop in the stock. Just not swayed at all. He is going strong as an Nvidia diamond hands. Meta, on the other hand, made a quick bet, a quick 100% return on his call spread. But he's not shorting the stock. Meta doesn't expect the Nvidia stock to continue downward. And if it bounces, maybe he'll do another call spread. Meta, is that a fair summary of your position on Nvidia?
Yeah, I mean, it's more so like when Nvidia goes up a lot, and the calls are like thinking it's going to keep going up. I feel like yeah, it's a safe thing. This is not an investment. This is just
Mhm.
a bet, like you said. It is a bet. It's like a
What's
sports
keeping
bet.
you from shorting the company? What
I
about
don't like
buying
rooting
puts?
against things morally. I'm in a different place. I don't need to do it, so I
I
don't
see.
want
Okay,
to.
I got you. Okay.
It's like a negativity
Now,
mindset.
Wes says he's holding on to his shares, and he believes that Nvidia is still pretty much uncontested when it comes to AI training, and he believes that NVIDIA GPUs will also play a large part in inference as well. Wes, is that fair summary of your bull thesis?
Yep, good summary, high level.
Yeah. Meta, what do you say to that? What's your response to that?
I would say I agree. I think a year ago, when Wes and I were talking about this, we agreed on a lot of the different dynamics, but the one we disagreed on was that the rate of demand exceed the rate of chip production. And if so, then NVIDIA's stock would go up. And I thought it would not. So I'm curious if Wes's position on that stays consistent or if there's other reasons why you're bullish.
Well, the demand growth, demand has still exceeded supply since over the last year. And
Yeah,
it
I
looks like
agree.
it's going to exceed over the next few quarters too. The question is really about what happens in 2026 and beyond. And I think West thinks that it's until we get to AGI, then until then, demand will continue to exceed supply. And West, did you change your view on that at all?
No, you're right. I think you were right, but I would also add that even when we get to AGI, because some goalposts kind of show us there now with some amount of level 2 reasoning. But I still think that even when we get to most practitioners agreeing that we're at AGI and beyond, it'll continue to outpace demand or supply.
Okay, Meta?
Yeah, I think the agreement we had was more about like the relative demand. So like I agree that demand has grown, but I don't think demand has 10x'd, while we've seen clearly a 10x reduction in training compute, ignoring deep scale.
Wes?
Where do you see demand right now?
I mean, I
Maybe
don't think
a little more.
ChatGPT demand has increased significantly. I think there is increased demand, but it's being spread amongst competitors. So while there might be 5
Sure.
service providers, overall demand is still, maybe like 4x, 5x where it was a year ago. I don't think it's taken off like people expected it to.
Really?
Exactly.
So you
I agree.
think that Sam's comments for Pro being $200, that there are people that are greatly exceeding the amount of demand that he thought on average they'd have, or because they would have priced it a lot higher. You're not seeing that?
So demand is a function of price. What he was talking about was at $20 a month. And by the way, the timing on that is funny, right? So he finishes a financial raise, and then he comes out. I hope he said this to his investors, but he goes out and says, even on Pro at $20 a month, we're losing money per customer. That's more an acknowledgement of how inefficient they were, even with their token limits and everything. It gives you a context for how other providers would be losing money. Unless they're publicly traded companies, you don't have insight into how much money they're burning. So that's not a
Yeah.
function of demand as much as cost.
Yeah,
Right.
I get that. The demand is there though. You're not seeing the demand.
No, I'm not saying
Like,
there's no demand. I'm saying that demand has not 10x'd without the cost going down.
okay, so you're specifically talking about 10x demand.
Yeah, because I think it's
Yeah,
fair to say the cost of training has declined by 10x, right? We've gone from 500 million to 50
sure,
million
sure,
at
sure.
least.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just the increase in demand I think is well beyond 10x though. That's the part that I still believe is true.
Where?
That's why we're seeing all these companies spin up and offer, free tiers and paid tiers.
Wes,
There's a ton of demand.
let me ask you something. So 2 years ago, when ChatGPT first came out, excuse me for a moment, when it first came out, how many people would you have said? I'm asking you to kind of look back here, but how many people would you have said would be subscribing to ChatGPT today at $20 a month?
I'm sorry, the question is exactly what?
So today, 11 million paying subscribers subscribe to ChatGPT, whether it's mostly plus version. They pay $20 a month. 11 million people around the world. When it first came out 2 years ago and it went viral in a few days, would you have expected the number to be higher, lower, or about the same today? I think Wes is having issues unmuting himself again.
Oh, sorry. Are you there? My bad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I don't know how much of that you heard or didn't hear, but I would have expected the number to be higher now. I think the number is higher. Did you say 11 million subscribers?
Yeah, according to the information, has more than 10 million paying subscribers.
Interesting.
OpenAI CEO said ChatGPT passed 11 million paying subscribers. Since September 11, 2024, but ChatGPT says as of January 2025. But it's in tens of, like, it's in 20 million kind of
Oh,
range, I
okay.
think,
Okay.
today.
Yeah, I would think it would be more in the 100 million range.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I thought
Yeah,
at the time. I thought
yeah,
by now, because it's so useful, I mean, I use it
yeah,
so many times that I would have expected hundreds of millions of people around the
yeah.
world, out of 8
But
billion people at least, to be able to
right, right.
use it now. But they're
The,
not.
the part that I find, sorry to be punny, but the perspective that I would use is that I'm very surprised there's a free tier still. I would have a nominal fee to use any form at this point because they have such great brand recognition. They're like Kleenex. I've like, why not at this point? So I'm kind of perplexed at that. I would handle that differently if I were them because I mean, all things being equal, they are a for-profit company now. So like, You should
Okay.
do that.
Meta?
Yes, I think the conflict is when Sam said it, he was very careful in the way he said it was they're losing money on the pro customers, not overall, just on the pro customers alone. So the free customers, assuming they have similar usage, adjusting for quality, are losing them about $20 a month. So they're burning cash really, really fast. The fact that they haven't gotten rid of the free tier tells you that they need the data and the volume to keep up.
Okay, so Wes, if you had expected, hundreds of millions of people to be using it by now or subscribing to it by now, and only 10 to 20 million people are subscribing, so that's 10 times slower adoption rate than what you and I would have expected 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How does that not make you question your investment thesis?
The only thing that makes me not question it is the amount of startups that have put their hat in the ring and are doing well. Like, I don't really use Chat GPT that much anymore. Google's been able to keep up, and Perplexity has been able to have a really interesting model. And I like Anthropic. The ability for these other companies to keep up has been surprising. I'm honestly surprised by that. Back in the day, Google hired all of the AI engineers that were coming out of college, and now they've got their own startups. Folks left OpenAI and started their own, and that has been flourishing largely. So that was unexpected. This is why I still think the demand is there. So that's my investment thesis.
So I agree that there's a number of startups that are all doing great, but I see that as bearish. I don't see it as bullish. Because the reason why I said bearish is because that removes the potential economic profits for ChatGPT. And if you can't create return on the investment and profits, that Microsoft has to slow down. And then you end up decoupling yourself from Microsoft and raising money from elsewhere, like Stargate. And that's only sustainable to a certain extent. So this is very similar to the EV landscape, where we had hundreds of EV companies, and now most of them are going bankrupt. And I bet you most of the AI companies that started up in the last couple of years will go bankrupt in the next couple of years.
Well, honestly, I think OpenAI's reason that they haven't kept their lead is that they've been kind of held back by corporate connections like Microsoft. I really, really worry that that's what's held them back. And now I'm hoping, that the whole landscape continues to move forward at a fast pace. And we're seeing this now with DeepSeek, is that largely it seems like the industry was being held back to a certain point, and DeepSeek just leapfrogged everybody. So hopefully that'll, keep folks pushing state of the art, as fast as possible.
Okay, Meta?
So, if I may ask the court to indulge me a little bit with more than 10 words, I would love to share a perspective on why or how I think Silicon Valley thinks and why I don't think a bunch of AI companies is a positive. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, having been in Silicon Valley a long time, there was a period of time when, Google especially started doing offers you can't refuse. People were making crazy amount of equity, and companies like Facebook started doing the same thing, huge offers. All these big companies were making massive offers, and it kind of dried up how much money VCs could make. Because back in the day, if you wanted to take a risk and you want to start a startup, you had to go to venture capital, you have to raise money, you have to give them a huge chunk of the company, and then if you're successful, they could take a piece of it. But if these Fortune 500s or mega, top companies start offering you a salary, low risk, and a piece of the upside, then the venture capitalists were basically cut out of it. Around that time is when I saw a lot of Andreessen Horowitz and all these different companies start, whisper campaigns where they would talk trash about working for big tech, yet they would be the first to hire people who worked at big tech. And I think when you look at the AI space, you're seeing the same thing. You see it with Elon and everybody else, right? They'll talk trash about people working at other companies, but be the first to hire them. And they're trying to fund it. And so there's money only going towards AI right now. And so I feel like the fact that there's a bunch of companies in it speaks more to a bubble and the venture capitalists trying to get a piece of it than there being demand for it.
Okay. I see Machine in the crowd. If he wants to come up, maybe give us his view, and we can switch to FSD as well. Anything else on NVIDIA? Wes or Meta or ACDC or Chris? Anything else? Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question for Wes. If like people keep saying DeepSeek has a innovation. I looked at GPRO. Sorry, GRPO. I don't know what is innovative in the paper. Do you have a engineering opinion on it?
Yeah, so the way that they did RL is innovative at a high level. Do you not agree? Or which
It's
part of that do you
different.
want
I think GRPO is different. It is a different approach, but it's
Yeah.
not that novel in my opinion because it's very much like TRPO. It's the same as IPO. I don't think it explains
Yep.
the jump they claim.
This is why I agree with you. This is why I want to see Hugging Face reproduce it. I want to see results. And there's another company, and I put it on a thread this morning. There's another company that claims to have reproduced one step of the training, the kind of the base level phase 1 training, and they did see a 50x improvement in cost reduction. So I'm interested to see what Hugging Face puts out. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know what else you're looking for.
The component that they reproduced was MOE, right? It wasn't GRPO. GRPO is the policy optimization portion, and my claim is if you were to zero out policy optimization, if you made the entire cost of the RLHF portion free, you still would only see maximum a 10x reduction.
Gotcha. So that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm like, where did the rest of the reduction come from? Like, if that's the only part you're innovating on, and you're claiming it went to zero,
Yep.
There's not enough juice to squeeze. So, like, yeah, I think the application of MOE. So, here's what I would say. I think when they make the claims that it's very, very reduced, I feel like there's a big asterisk. They're probably getting electricity for free. They're probably not including the cost of renting any of the hardware because they can't even claim they have some of the hardware they probably used. And if you do those line item reductions, then suddenly you get closer.
Okay. Okay. Meta, let's switch to FSD. So some people are saying these innovations will allow companies, machines here. Machine, go ahead. Any thoughts?
I don't have too much to say. I haven't studied this much in detail, but the one thing I was saying this morning, which I agree with Meta, is I don't trust anything that these people say. And I exactly was thinking the same
That's
thing.
not what he said. That's not what he said.
No.
He didn't say I don't trust anything they say.
Okay. He said what I agree with is who knows how much energy they're getting energy for free. They're getting the hardware for free. Their claims on, exactly how much it costs them is suspect. That's all.
The other evidence is the fact that they suddenly got hacked today and they can't handle the scale, right? Like if it's really working, then they should be welcoming all the demand and it shouldn't cost them that much.
Meta, what percent of what they said do you think is correct? What percent is, if you had to kind of guess?
GRPO is interesting. That is innovative. I think someone else, not the engineers that worked on it, is making some claims to get some press, maybe. And like, I'm not saying that there's nothing innovative. I want to make that very clear, right? It's an interesting approach. It's a different approach. We could talk a little bit about what the differences are in a non-mathematical level if you want, but I'm not sure that that's more transformative than Titan, for example, which we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk about what do you have time? Do you have like half hour, 45 minutes?
Yeah, I have time. I'm honestly just hiding from the heat right now, so I'm going to be resting and happy to chat.
Okay, great. Well, if you're coming into TSLA to hide from the heat, maybe I should turn up the heating here a little bit. But so what are the basically top 3 innovations that that was surprising to people from this paper?
I think the biggest innovation that's surprising to people, and this is so confusing to me, is MOE. MOE is a paper that was written in 2018. It was talked about by Google when Gemini 2 or 1.5 came out, and it's been talked about for a very long time. It came out a year after the Transformers paper, and if you recall, I don't know, around the time that the Gemini thing came out, I remember coming into one of your spaces and saying,
Yeah, we talked about
wait,
it.
yeah, I'm like, wait for it. Suddenly people are
I
gonna be
know.
like, MOE's so innovative and it's
I
so
know.
breaking. And people are gonna be like, Google gave it away for free. They're idiots. And it's like, no, you
I
know,
know.
the stuff is out there for a long time. The thing
Well,
people are
I was
realizing
going to
is,
ask you that. Is MOE as transformative as Transformers? I think I did ask you that question,
yeah, I
right?
said that back in the day. And a
Yeah.
machine asked me for a bunch of papers back in the day, and that was one of the papers I gave him. I was like, yeah, that's the next big one. After, it goes Transformers, Chinchilla, MOE, and now Titans.
Mhm.
We'll see. In like 2 years from now, people are gonna be like, "Oh my god, this is groundbreaking." Maybe it'll take 6 years. Let's see how long the cycle is on this one.
Okay, MOE is kind of like, my understanding of MOE is that you don't have to use every part of the model. You can only you can use parts of it to solve a given problem,
That's
and that's why is that kind of layman's terms gist of it?
that is true, but it's a mischaracterization of it. Like, so I think a lot of people try to describe it in the wrong way. MOE to me is the ability to use more chips and have chips specialize. So that's the real power of MOE. And I think that's where like the academic versus the engineering aspects really differ. And so this could be a really good engineering implementation, but it's yet to be seen because it's an academic paper. But if you think of like Amazon Web Services, right? If somebody has a website, let's take X, right? The X platform as an example. Maybe scrolling on the timeline is very, very, very popular. Spaces is popular, but not as popular. And Spaces takes up more resources because it's audio versus text. But let's say for the simplicity that they're both using the same amount of data for now, if they launch X and they have no context as to which one's going to be more popular, they could theoretically launch a binary that handles both streaming and the feed. Then the problem is, let's say the feed becomes 10 times more popular than Spaces, they're going to have to bring up as many servers as can handle the feed, and then all the RAM, heap, and processing power you keep on reserve to be able to support Spaces is wasted, and it's just sitting there because only 1/10 of it's getting used. So if instead you bifurcate it and you create microservices and you have a feed service and you have a Spaces service and you have a routing service that says when the request comes in, send it to the right one. Now, even though you've added a little bit of latency because you were doing a little bit of routing, you can now scale up appropriately. So you can now have the same number of servers, but allocate in a better ratio
Okay.
to feed versus, yeah, that's the same thing happening with the brain.
But,
in
okay,
this
so great segue to FSD. So you said this is adding a bit of latency, which obviously Tesla cannot do,
Correct.
right? So are you telling me that mixture of experts is not applicable to Tesla in the same way that it is for
Yes.
LLMs?
It is mixture of experts is not applicable to embedded AI.
Embedded AI.
Embedded AI is on
elaborate?
device. On device.
Okay. So but wouldn't it be applicable to Optimus more so
Optimus
than
doesn't have to
FSD?
be. Optimus does not have to be embedded because most applications, I would imagine, Optimus can connect to the internet, and you don't actually care if it's doing it all in the machine itself or if it's going to a cloud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yes, it is applicable to all scenarios where you're okay with deferring to a crowd. It's applicable.
Say that last part again. To all scenarios, what?
To all scenarios where you can defer to the cloud, it is
I see.
applicable. Yeah. So all the
see.
people that are
Okay.
like, I've played with it on my computer and it's so good. It's just confirmation bias because it's no different than Llama on your computer. There's no advantage of MOE. So you're just
Right.
getting an output difference from weights. And yeah, it's good. I'm not saying it's not good, but if we're talking engineering, it's all about trade-offs, right? Like how much money did they spend? How much resources did they spend? Nobody's saying you couldn't do that with a chinchilla curve. We all know that you can. It's just nobody else is doing it because they have businesses to run.
Right. Now, okay.
Sorry, I'm clearly throwing cold water on this. If I'm too biased, can you call me out?
No, it's totally fine. I think you're
You're too biased.
No, no. You
Thank you, Wes. I will try to dial it back.
I finally just got connection back, so I missed a lot of what you said.
All right. Okay, so is there any part of this paper that came out that kind of shocked the world and being talked about around the world right now? Any part of it that's applicable to FSD that would accelerate
GRPO.
path? Okay, tell us about it,
So,
please.
so remember our analogy back in the day? We used to use like the chemistry student and like they're in a university and they have exams
Right.
and do all that kind of stuff, right? So our world today for FSD is there's only one exam, there's only one course, and they go and do the examination. And that's just the full stack approach that Tesla's using. And with V11, they were going to use different chemistry subjects and stuff like that. And MOE is like an explosion of that. What GRPO does that's a little bit different, that is interesting, I don't think it's as applicable necessarily to FSD, but maybe it could be when it go to different regions around the world, is it allows for a moving target on the goal. So usually when you do training, you're trying to align to a particular policy and the policy is fixed. And in GRPO, they allow the policy goal to drift, which is interesting. So like, you have a target, you kind of like start with something, you say it is absolutely not a good idea to, I'm making an example here, that's not exactly how it would work, but it is absolutely not a good idea to ever go forward when it's a red light. And then later on you see a bunch of examples of humans doing it on right turns and you're like, oh, maybe it's okay to go forward on a right when it's a right turn. Then you see a whole bunch of people doing it with the sign that says no right turn on red. And you're like, oh, maybe it's not okay to do it in those scenarios. So today there's a constant loop where a human is involved in the loop to keep adjusting that policy, to refine it to be exactly what it should be. And GRPO has the promise, theoretically, of allowing that to drift on its own.
Okay, so GRPO, using GRPO, Tesla can theoretically not need human feedback for its reinforcement learning process.
It
And
needs
why do you
less.
say
Needs
why do you,
less.
exactly? So why do you say it is theoretically like that? Like, what are some of the roadblocks, potential roadblocks?
So there was a paper from Berkeley that kicked all of this off called TRPO. From there came PPO and all the other things. There's other policy optimization techniques as well. The problem with the TRPO paper was it was mathematically an amazing equation, but like computationally very expensive and like nobody does it. It's a great for an academic paper. If you want to publish a model that's like extremely performant but extremely expensive, go for it. PPO took two components of that and made them work really well. So that was OpenAI's innovation. Very, very cool. That took off. Then there's a bunch of other policy optimization techniques that have been tried. IPO is pretty popular as well. Um, the things that OpenAI took from it was we should clip things. So don't, if you're good at something and you get it right, don't over reward yourself. Reward yourself less than if you're not good at something and you get it right. So like humans, when you're learning something early on and you have a new skill you learn and you should be more excited about that. That's one thing they took from it. And the other thing they took from it was time decay. So if you learned a skill a long time ago, and you're still good at it, you should give yourself some reward. But if you learned something a long time ago and that's kind of like the main thing that they did there. What GRPO does slightly different from that is they say, let's say you said, I want to become a really good basketball player and I want to be as good as Steph Curry. And you go and you start shooting threes and you realize you're horrible at shooting threes, but you're pretty good at dunking. It just goes, I don't want to be a good basketball player who shoots threes anymore. I just want to be really good at dunking. It changes the goal. And that's quite different than the way other approaches are today. It usually you don't change the goal. Now this could be detrimental to Tesla because it might be that in Tesla's case, you really understand what the goal is. In the chatbot scenario, they're arguing, we don't actually know what the goal is. We don't really know what the customer wants. So we're just going to bias towards what we think the customer wants, not what the steering committee thinks the customer wants.
Okay, but doesn't GRPO, in a sense, make it easier for the second in place to be a faster follower? If they need less human feedback, that means they maybe not need millions of cars on the roads.
Yes.
Hmm.
Every innovation in AI will make it easier for catching up. That's always the case in technology.
Okay. Um, Okay.
You still have to build the
With
cars. You still have to build the cars. You still have to get
okay,
the
so
data.
you believe Tesla's longer term competitive advantage is going to be manufacturing, building the
Yeah,
cars.
that's what I've always said. Yeah,
But see,
in
I
America.
agreed with that until BYD ramped production way faster than Tesla, and to now a greater level than Tesla as well in basically all geographies. The only place where
Yep.
they're not competing is US, and that's because they're not allowed to do so. But
Yeah,
everywhere
and
else, BYD is eating Tesla lunch. And let me ask you something here. Okay, just one quick fun fact here. What do you think Tesla's ASP is in China?
40 to 50K maybe.
$33,800. What do you think is BYD's?
27 maybe, based on that number.
$16,700. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
Do they have the
wild?
same level of safety features and like?
I don't know what it is, but I mean, I'll take 1% higher risk of death for half the price. A lot of
Is
people
that
would.
for BEV or NEV or all?
Um,
I
well,
would
first of all,
assume. I would
they
assume
only
it's for
do.
all.
Well, first of all, they don't do ICE, right? So it might be a hybrid and EVs. So yeah, it's probably all. But still, I mean, it's not like a lot of customers. Like in my opinion, the primary reason why EV growth has slowed down is because of hybrids have taken over. Hybrids are eating EVs lunch, so you can't really look at it that separately either. But even if you just look at EV front, I mean, it's going to be a very substantial difference. But that's a huge. So where is the manufacturing expertise? If it's half the price, and they're selling more vehicles at half the price of a Tesla, making as much money, and they're more vertically integrated into batteries and everything, where is the manufacturing expertise that's supposed to be longer term competitive advantage?
I would argue the goals of the company are different. So BYD is throwing the kitchen sink at the problem. So they're doing everything they can to make money. So they're trying to see what sticks. Tesla's genius is in making each and every car with the lowest possible cogs so that they can fulfill the vision of the company. So I think that is, like, in a nutshell, what I think is going on. I'm not saying one way or the other is right, but I am saying that BYD is knocking it out of the park in terms of like producing vehicles that are really compelling and valuable.
Well, I mean, 4 million people that disagree with you, I guess, every year, or 5 million now. They're becoming a top 3 automakers soon. Meta?
Yeah, I think the place where I would disagree is I do think, unfortunately, Tesla's really dropped the ball on this, right? We saw stiff wiring when they did the original factory tour with the Cybertruck launch, steer by wire. And the problem is they discuss all these things publicly and they don't ship it for so long that it allows a competitor like BYD to get a head start. And it feels like they put hype and investor awareness too early in the pipeline versus just doing it and then having people be surprised. So unfortunately, yeah, I hear your point, Yaman. Like, I don't know that their advantage lasts as long. And as you know, in the spaces I've talked about, starting to slowly offload.
Yeah. Dear Tesla Holdings, like Kristen.
Correct.
BYD sold 1.5 million vehicles in Q4. That's a 6 million annualized rate, and they're growing really fast. So if Tesla had a manufacturing expertise that is supposed to be the long-term competitive advantage, you would have expected that to be either the margins to be substantially different, or the numbers, or the ramp speed, or the quality. I think the quality has already increased in Turkey. BYD is outgrowing Tesla, and that's a market they both compete in. Australia, same thing. And that's before BYD builds factories that are planning, and with all the pushback from the American government to not sell their cars in the US and not be able to build a factory in Mexico because Trump is saying, if you do this, then we're going to put tariffs and everything. So with basically and with all the kind of like the exports, GPU restrictions and all that stuff, I don't know. I don't really see a manufacturing expertise anymore.
To be fair, if every ICE
And then
became hybrid,
and then on top of that, you have, where is the manufacturing expertise with Solar Roof? Where is the manufacturing expertise for 680s? Where is it with Cybertruck? Where is it with this and that? So I don't know.
Not to be too much of a downer on it, I think it is honestly it is a reflection of shifted focus. But the other way you can look at it is there are geopolitical factors at play. There are reasons why people will continue to buy from America over China. A lot of the countries out there would probably prefer to do business with America than China. There's some factors at play there. The other thing I do want to say is for people that are like really pro climate change, and the reason why they're attacking this is climate change, if the BYD hybrids actually have large batteries, it's not the end of the world. Most people probably could do with a 100-mile, even 50-mile battery, as long as they actually charged it regularly. That would be a big difference.
Yeah. All right. So I know this is really interesting because when we first came into Tesla Live a couple of years ago, we were all mostly or all invested in Tesla, and now we have people betting against Tesla, short sellers, those damn short sellers. We have people who have Tesla as their primary holding. We have some as all in, uh, and we disagree on Nvidia, bulls, bears. There are people writing call spreads, shorting Nvidia or invested in Nvidia. It's really amazing how the portfolios have changed, diverged from each other, even though we discuss the same facts in this space day after day. We all share the same facts. Really amazing. All right. Meta, what do you make of the rise in Apple today? 4%. Some people claim that that's because, AI, if AI on, I think Gavin Baker said, if AI on the edge becomes good enough, then, you know, laptop producers, smartphone producers will benefit from the DeepSeek news. What do you think? Actually, hold on one
Maybe
second. I think Machine just jumped on finally to say something. Machine, do you have anything to add on the previous topics?
I just want to add, and to be clear, you are not amazing. I know you feel so great today because stock market's down, but you still suck.
Okay. Well, welcome to the space and letting us know that you're here. All right, Minda, what do you think about what I just asked? Apple up 4%. I have a different interpretation, but I want to hear your interpretation first.
first off, I'm surprised I can speak after Machine's brain-numbing commentary there. I'm glad there's enough brain cells still remaining to communicate here. The compression in my brain's working well. It needs less neurons. Anyway, the answer to your question, I think, is just when people sell one stock, they try to put their money into another place, and if they're focused on tech, they're probably like, "Oh man, I over hyper indexed on Nvidia. Apple's still a good product." And there are rumors I've heard of them getting into home devices, and there's a big gap there. That's probably why.
Okay. And I think it's a safe haven. I think Apple Silicon is a bit of a safe haven. But what I want to ask is, Machine went back and forth now a couple of times whether robotaxis or Optimus will generate the first billion. The last we touched on was robotaxis, and I wonder if he switched back to Optimus now after DeepSeek news. Machine, did you?
No, I don't think right now that that's changing much on the timeline of Optimus. I don't know. I haven't thought about it much. I mean, I don't. This stuff just happened over the weekend. I know that you guys don't have a life. I have family. I have a job. So I'd have to think about more. Maybe I'm interested to hear what Meta says, but otherwise, no, I don't know yet.
Machine, first off, if you just heard about it over the weekend, you're a little late to the party. It came out a little while
Exactly.
before the
Well, on
weekend.
Friday.
You
When
could
did it
have
happen?
just
I
read the
was using
tweet.
it on
You could have
Friday.
just read the tweet at the top, man, for December 31.
Deep
Had
Seek?
you read that, yeah, maybe you would have shorted the Tesla. I mean, Nvidia.
What just came out? Their new model just came out last week.
Oh my God. Okay. Meta, what do you think about Optimus versus robotaxis?
I'm still on robotaxis. I know people think Optimus will be there, but as you just discussed, their production has been I don't know if Optimus is going to come out the gate functioning and making a ton of money right off the bat. I think it will make money in manufacturing. I think that is the most promising thing. They should hyper focus on that. If they go for this global and works everywhere approach like they did with Tesla FSD, it's going to be a long road, right? Like maybe they still get there first, but I mean, as you can see with Waymo, a targeted approach might get there earlier and be operating well before Optimus gets there.
So Waymo has about 1,000 robotaxis now in a couple of cities, and they're looking to expand. But in the last year or so, they haven't really expanded to new cities. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so I was actually at CES and I got to see they had 3 cars on display. I only knew about the Zeekr model. Did you guys know about the Hyundai?
Yeah.
Okay, well the Hyundai looked exactly like the Jaguar car. And if you go back and you look at like through some of the news stories, there was a moment where there's a news story about them ordering 50,000 cars from Jaguar. They only have about 100, or sorry, 1,000, right? I'm guessing what happened is Jaguar didn't deliver the cars. So what do you do when you're trying to buy cars, COVID hits, and the manufacturer of the cars doesn't deliver?
So you believe they're limited by car manufacturing,
I think
but
so.
now they're teaming up with Zeekr and they're teaming up with Hyundai.
Hyundai.
You said,
Yeah. So one company from
and
China, one come from India.
okay. So should we expect several thousand robotaxis in a number of cities in 2025?
I would expect so. They laid out a plan for 9 more cities this year, right?
Mm-hmm. And you think they're going to hit those targets?
Have they shown that they don't hit their targets? I think they're more reliable than Tesla, right?
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't say much. But yeah.
I have no reason to believe they won't hit those targets. I have not looked into it
Okay.
enough to say that they will.
Okay. Have you been in a Waymo? Sorry, let's go to Wes.
Yes.
Wes.
All I wanted to say is that they have been very late and they have not been hitting their targets. They've set a lot of targets that they've been late on. And not to mention they're not doing highways yet for paying customers. So they're not infallible.
They do
Everybody's been
They're
highways.
not doing highways. They do
They do
highways. Yeah,
highways.
that's
Wes, they do highways. I've been on the highway in Waymo.
for paying customers, not for
Yes.
employees.
In Scottsdale.
It's not on their website. They
I mean,
still
Okay.
say that highways is for employees. So
if you order
I
from,
haven't seen
the
a
airport,
video either. Why isn't there a video on YouTube?
follow JJ Ricks.
Okay, I'll look it up. It's got to
All right,
be a paying.
Meta, let me ask you. Yeah, Meta, let me ask you. So let's say, so you tried it in, I guess, Phoenix. You tried it. Did you try it in San Francisco too?
Yeah, I've tried it a bunch in San Francisco. I think the last time I
Okay.
looked at it, I had like almost 100 rides.
Now, wow, okay. So when you try it, do you wait for more than Uber?
I looked this up and I was talking to Omar about this, and it turns out I have a little bit of an exceptional case because I'm not that far from a depot. It's always 6 minutes to my house.
Okay. Chris, I'm gonna move you down for a second. All right. So when you're not waiting, I guess you have an exceptional, but I also haven't really heard of cases where people wait for long to use a waiver, and they obviously given millions of rides now. So um, clearly operational business, and they're doing this in San Francisco with a few hundred cars.
They're also doing it in Scottsdale pretty well, and I think their
Right.
integration there is if you call an Uber, it falls back to a Waymo if it's close by.
Right. So is that going to be the case going forward? Just a few hundred cars per city, not even 1,000 per city needed. I mean,
Remember?
I know we talked about this before, like
Yeah.
2 years ago. We talked about this,
Yeah.
and your argument was that they can do most cities with like tens of thousands of range, and I was like, no way. And then we kind of went through the math and kind of like added up, but now I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, do they even need that now? What do you think?
I mean,
Wes?
to be fair, it depends on what part of the market they go for, right? So the first few cars are extremely profitable compared to the last few cars because the first few cars operate. It's like the dips and troughs of any demand cycle, like energy or anything else, right? So if you just target a certain like the lower volume of cars that operate 100% of the time, then you're capped. If you try to get the entire market, now you have to go after peak, demand only, and during peak demand, now your cars are not as efficient because they're not operating the other half.
Okay, so you're convinced that they don't need that much more.
No,
Like,
I
let's
think
say
maybe
10
10,000 to 20,000 cars, yeah, tops, and then the whole market would be theirs at that point.
in 10 years, 20,000 cars, and they have the whole market. Is that what you said?
No, the non-peak market. To be clear,
Okay, I see.
steady market. Yeah, the peak market is probably like double or triple that, right?
Okay, so 20,000 cars, non-peak market nationwide.
I think the last time we did this, we only looked at a handful of cities, but it was roughly, if I recall correctly, it's been a minute, I haven't done the math since. It was about $50,000 per major city. Sorry, 50,000 cars per major city, roughly.
Okay, Wes.
I was curious, is Waymo price parity with Uber in Scottsdale? Is that what I heard you say, that it falls over to Waymo? So that
Yeah,
would assume it's price parity?
I would assume so, yeah.
And do you remember the dollars per mile?
I don't, but I can look some rides up.
This is part of my equation that I'd love some like real data for.
I can get you the real data because I have a history. I can screenshot some stuff and send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not too much trouble, or you can just estimate. Because if it's price parity, I can pretty much easily look that up.
I'm in an area where it does not operate, so when I open up the app, it rejects letting me look at any of the stats. Just weird.
Yeah, I can just check local rates in the area.
Yeah, give me a week, and then I'll give you the data when I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so if Waymo has tens of thousands of vehicles in major cities, let's say top 10 city is done with 50,000 vehicles. I mean, that's not going to be very difficult to get from Hyundai that produces millions of vehicles a year. And Meta.
I was wrong. I can just hit a button and get into it. I have the numbers for Wes if he wants it.
Okay. Go ahead.
1.84 miles costs about $12.40. $12.50.
Ouch.
That's in San Francisco.
Oh, okay, got it. I was looking for. So that's when it falls over to Waymo. It's that much.
No, that's San Francisco. Let me go back and find when I was.
So I'm looking for more like the average. That sounds, very short trips. They're much higher per mile. No, I was thinking that it would be more like, in the $2.50 to $3 range per mile.
So I took one in Austin, Texas, and it was in the $2 to $2.50 per mile range. And I was very impressed. I really loved the experience. The AI voice would talk to you, and it was very funny. They have good writers over there. So overall, I was willing to pay more to take a Waymo driverless taxi than for an Uber, because you don't have a strange, smelly person in there with you, and you can get full control over the music. And it was just overall a more comfortable experience. It did not take highways when I was there in December. So it was actually a longer route. Like, it took us like 10 minutes longer to get back to our house, but we were perfectly willing to extend the trip because like we were enjoying the experience.
The longest route I could find that I took in Scottsdale was about $3.80 a mile, and the other ones are equal or if not higher. So I don't think it's like $1 or $2 a mile, just to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds more in line with what I was thinking. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Meta.
I mean, in the longer run, these numbers are obviously going to come down. Like, that sometimes people get really hung up on how much it costs, for example, to build the cars, but it's kind of irrelevant in the future. Wes and Meta.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you. I need to bail. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Always a great space, Yaman. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Meta.
Yeah, I was going to say, I disagree with your idea. Like, and a lot of people think that the prices are going to come down. I'm not sure that the prices are going to come down. I think, let's say we ran an experiment with human drivers, and Uber was subsidizing all the rides by 50% compared to, say, I don't know, regular taxis for a period of time. They could capture market share for sure, but did the market actually grow? Did people start taking rides who wouldn't normally take rides? And I think if we look back to that case study, which actually happened, we didn't see rides increase by that much. So certainly cutting the price in half doesn't cause more than doubling of demand. If that's the case, prices aren't coming down.
Okay, I was talking more about the cost per car, the building of the car.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking about the rides themselves. I don't think the cost matters if the prices stay the same. One company just makes less profit than the other.
DeepSeek just dropped another open source AI model, Janus Pro 7 billion. Its multimodal can generate images and beats OpenAI's DAL-E 3 and Stable Diffusion across Gen Eval and DPG benchmarks. This comes on top of all the R1 hype. Meta, any comments on this?
When benchmarks are public, they're very easy to beat.
Got it. Okay. And then I think NVIDIA spokesperson, NVIDIA made a comment about the DeepSeek stuff. Let me just read that if I can find it again. NVIDIA just released a statement regarding DeepSeek. DeepSeek is an excellent AI advancement and a perfect example of test time scaling. DeepSeek's work illustrates how new models can be created using that technique, leveraging widely available models and compute that is fully export control compliant. Wow. Interesting. So NVIDIA confirmed that they use H800s then, right?
They certainly may have. Have you seen the Scale
Wow.
AI CEO talk about this, by the way?
I know. We'll get to that. We talked about it earlier, but let me just finish the statement real quick. So let me just repeat that sentence again. DeepSeek's work illustrates how new models can be created using that technique, leveraging widely available models and compute that is fully export control compliant. Inference requires significant numbers of NVIDIA GPUs and high performance networking. We now have 3 scaling laws, pre-training and post-training, which continue, and new test time scaling. Okay. Meta, any comments on that statement before we talk about scale AI?
I think when he's saying test time compute scaling, I'm not sure what he's referring to. Is he referring
Yeah,
to
I
inference?
know.
Like,
You
it's
know,
very
see,
bizarre.
like that's the stuff that he says sometimes, and I'm like, listen to him on interviews. I'm like, do you actually know what you're talking about, or are you more of a salesperson that goes around science boobs?
Yeah, I'm just saying,
So,
like, there is a thing called test time compute for what it's worth. It's just
right.
not something you would break out from training. Like, testing is part of training. Also sometimes called validation. That you can break testing into 2 different things. But part of training itself, that like technically the thing you would call testing is half of training.
hmm So, but this statement sounds like that part of the statement sounds like a response to the idea scaling laws are kind of running into a wall, right? But
Yeah.
beyond that, so we now know, according to NVIDIA, DeepSeek used fully export control compliant, which I guess means H800s like they claimed, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
here's something to consider.
Now, okay, hold that thought, and then okay, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead first?
Actually, so everybody wants to talk about benchmarks, hype train, all that stuff is great. Why is DeepSeek behind OpenAI on LMSys?
I don't know.
That's the question nobody's able to answer. Like by a fairly significant elo, in my opinion.
I thought they were up there. Maybe I'm misremembering this. Hugging Face Leadership Board, right?
They're third. They beat Claude. They beat
Mhm.
Anthropic. 100%. Give them credit for that. But if they had some crazy innovation that was so much better, it wouldn't be at best at parity, right? Again, it's recreation. No one's saying you can't recreate, but they're
So
trying to claim they've leapfrogged.
DeepSeek R1 1357 arena score, ChatGPT 4.0 1365. I mean, they don't seem that different to me, at least from a layman's perspective. Maybe that's a big difference. But the thing is, like, if they did it at 10x less compute, 100x less compute, then I mean that's the idea, right? The cost efficiency is the
Yeah, the claim is cost efficiency.
right.
That I'm going to put a massive asterisk on, because if they're claiming they got to the similar performance with cost efficiencies, then bold claims require evidence. So like the paper has no
hmm
context for how that cost
hmm
savings actually happened at all. If anything, they made the computational portion more expensive, not less expensive. So that means they had to have used less data. So how did they figure out exactly what data to use? Where did that data come from? Did they do it by the same, ethical standards that the others are competing with. Debatable,
Okay, debatable. Fine.
But if you
What was
just
I-
use the training data by looking at the benchmarks, then you're going to do much better at the benchmarks. We already know that.
Okay. Can you kind of explain what Jensen's trying to say here? We now have 3 scaling laws: pre-training and post-training, which continue, and new test time scaling. Yeah, honestly, I'm not 100% on what test time means. So if you're telling me that it's on the training side, I think that's what Wes said as well. But I thought test time was more like, taking its time to kind of think during inference when I go to ChatGPT, for example. What's that one called? The latter
That's called chain of thought.
chain of thought. Okay.
Sometimes tree of thought, anything of thought, but it's all kind of just falling into chain of thought now as a generic term. That's the popular buzzword for it. There's other words, but we'll stick to that for now.
Okay. Do you agree with the following statement? A lot of people say that what DeepSeek presented will accelerate new model development at a much cheaper cost, and you know it will lead to higher demand in GPUs. But I think that's going to happen at a gradual pace, not kind of overnight or next year kind of thing. It's going to happen over the next several years, maybe a decade, as people test things, see what the innovations they read in these papers, apply to their use cases, maybe test it, maybe fail a couple of times, then try again. A few companies go bankrupt in the process, etc. Or is it more like all right, wow, okay, we see what DeepSeek did. It's open source. We can apply everything. It applies to most, venture capital firms out there and backing these AI companies.
I'm just going to say DeepSeek is not open source. I want to be absolutely clear. It is open weights. It is not open source, right? So no one can reproduce it because it is not open source. Open source means you can pick it up and reproduce it. Llama is also only Llama 2 is open source, or the original Llama, right? The code was leaked. So it wasn't originally, but it became open source when somebody leaked it, and then Facebook decided not to sue or pursue. I don't even know what they could have done about it, but
Okay.
in terms of the what the impact will be, I think the real impact of DeepSeek is it feels like the powers that be are going to use this, and I don't have an opinion on this, but I think this is what's going to happen. They're going to use it to bolster investment and kind of create a space race between the US and China on AI. And I guess I do have an opinion on it in this part. As long as it's done in a healthy way, that's fine. But if we say in the space race, we don't care about ethics anymore, that's a problem.
Okay. But you didn't ask my question.
Yeah, I think there will be increased demand because salespeople will use it as a way to rile people up and be like, we got to invest in this. If you can get DARPA to invest in it more, if you can get government dollars coming into it, subsidizing it, now you have a discussion, right? Like I could see, I don't know, I don't want to say somebody specific, but I think you could picture who I'm talking about. There's an individual who's really good at sales. He's very involved in AI at the moment, and if he could somehow get the government to put a whole bunch of funding into subsidizing the cost of AI, that would be advantageous for certain companies.
Okay, so if government can get involved and all right, basically buy GPUs for certain companies from NVIDIA.
Or give you like electricity dividends, like you get tax credits or tax savings or something else.
I mean, I think those things are helpful if if you're kind of on a standalone, those things are helpful if you're a Tesla and on a standalone basis you can actually be profitable. Those things can help you grow faster, maybe. But
They
if
can
you're
help.
Rivian,
They can help OpenAI if they're not profitable right now.
yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Like if it's more like Rivian, where even on a unit basis you're not profitable, then I don't think there's much the government can do for you.
Yeah, I agree. The government can only help you reduce your capex. They can't make you get
So
profit.
my understanding is that most of these AI companies are more like Rivians, and I don't know if there's one that's more like Tesla.
I heard someone say this. I'm not going to quote who it was, but it was paraphrasing. It was to the effect of many more AI companies will probably be in creative and useful applications of the AI than the AI generation itself. And I agree with that. Like Apple was very, very popular because Steve Jobs found a way to make it beautiful, easy to use, absolutely a pleasure to use as a product, compared to the Windows and DOS and various other things that came before it. That's what kind of took that market and grew it and expanded it. And then of course Windows became big and in its own right, but like until the GUI existed, until like it became very approachable, things didn't take off. And the invention of the chip or compute or CPUs, very cool on the engineering front. I think we need some innovation on the artistic side, on the people understanding side, and that's not quite there yet, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay. Do you think this gets us closer to do you feel confident today versus early last week or the week before that we're closer to AGI because of this news?
I personally don't think so.
Exactly. That's exactly my thought as well. People say that we're closer to AGI, and all those people have an incentive to say so because they might be raising money or they have investments, etc. But I think there's going to be some breakthroughs needed, and this is not it.
If you don't write me $1 billion check, China will win.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Mm, do you think all else equal, the DeepSeek paper, is it just one paper or a number of papers?
DeepSeek has written a few papers. Yeah.
Okay. Any of the papers that people are talking about, does that get Tesla any closer to robotaxis or Optimus? All else equal.
I think Tesla's pretty close, and they don't really need to veer off course. I personally dislike when they went from V11 to 12. I know 12 has been a really good breakthrough. Unfortunately, in some other timeline, maybe FSD is already done because they didn't take a big diversion, even though it's a big jump at first. It's slower, like the S curve.
You mean end to end?
Yeah, I don't think they need to go end to end. Like that is now a differentiation between how they're doing it on. No, sorry, not end to end neural nets. They should go end to end neural nets, but end to end on a single stack versus multi-stack. Waymo is doing multi-stack. They're doing single stack. They're trying to get to single stack.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they're not even doing single stack because they're now bifurcating it based on parking, highway, and city. Well, then why couldn't they have also bifurcated by perception and action? Right, it's a strange choice.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, MOE, and this is what I said at that time. Remember, we went from V11 to 12, and I admitted I was wrong. We didn't hit our timelines that I thought maybe we would hit, which again, we probably wouldn't have hit, even if they didn't bifurcate. Like, I'm probably completely wrong on that timeline. But the point is, had they kept it separated, it would have been more like MOE. Right? Keeping perception and action separated is more like MOE. And for whatever reason, just look at evolution, our brains are more like MOE.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything else I was going to ask you? Machine?
So, Meta, do you think Tesla's currently working on building out a interface for some people to monitor remote interventions at scale?
I would hope so. Yeah. I would imagine they must be. Why do you think that's not the case?
Because I feel like it's cheating.
No, it's ridiculous to say you're not going to comply with laws. Like, I think you have to comply with the California law.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take away the law aspect. Just, do you think they're doing that to, get something working and out on the road unsupervised?
I would consider it bad engineering to not do that. There's a philosophy that I've heard. I'm pretty sure Elon abides by this. We'll just go with he does abide by this. If you ship at 100, you're too late. You want to ship products when they're 80 to 90% done, and then learn in production. Because if you wait until they're 100, you don't know if you hit 120. You probably could have shipped it earlier and learned a little bit in production. So ship early, ship often.
Machine?
Do we recall, has Elon made comments previously about Waymo relying on remote operators, not operators, remote interventionalists.
I
What's
think
the
he made
term?
comments about using simulators, right? But he backtracked on that. So I don't know if he did or didn't make comments. I'm not sure it's that relevant.
Okay. Anything else, Machine? Okay.
No, I just think it's the market overreaction today.
Do you mean to Nvidia stock or overall markets?
I mean, Nvidia's down, but there are many other people are down as well. And I don't know, are we supposed to say that's not due to this DeepSeek? Is it due to Trump, Colombia,
No,
tariffs?
it's obviously the AI bubble popped.
Yeah.
The AI bubble popped. And
Yeah.
all the companies that have some sort of AI aspect to them, even including some utilities, are down substantially. Meta?
Do you think it could also be possibly related to the crypto bubble that started popping a little while ago?
No, I don't think that's it. But I will say that I think this market is or was getting to a point where I guess it still is. That's more expensive than even in 1999 tech bubble. So I don't think people realize it. But yeah, so Machine, let me ask you something. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, of course, I generally agree with you that it's pretty overheated and highly valued, and that's why my risk assessment goes with that. But how do you get to that? It's more highly valued than the .com bubble.
Mm-hmm.
First off, Yaman, make sure you clip to the point where Machine said he generally agrees with you, and then just leave that from the here on out. Put it on like a soundboard so you can just play it back to him.
Yeah, I will sleep to that. No, it's yeah. I don't think people look at this the right way. I think people are kind of like using analogies that are just not applicable anymore. But I think there are many indications of why that is the case, and I'll tell you one of them. Okay, only one. The top 10 companies concentration of top 3 company countries is higher today than it was back in 1999, for example. Okay.
Is that it?
It's not it, but that's one example.
That's
There's a lot of
terrible
indications.
Terrible.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a very good
Correlation is not causation.
Mhm.
While the concentration is certainly extremely high, the earnings for those companies are also much higher.
Yeah, and I mean
Whereas-
that's exactly what I would expect from somebody who's so focused on PE ratios. Exactly what I would expect you to say.
So what's
And
your
it's because
retort?
of people like
Your retort.
you. It's because of people like you we found ourselves here today in a world where people are so obsessed about PE ratios that they can't fucking see the bubble that they're in. And they end up waking up one morning on a Monday in the cold and realize their stock portfolios are down 20%.
This makes
And they look at
no
these PE
sense.
ratios again and
Makes
they
no
go,
sense.
there is
Unbelievable.
there's no way this can be. This has got to be one off. We're going to bounce. So overreaction, right, mom? They say, because of people like you.
You know, I just how can someone who's talked about companies and dissing PE ratios or earnings because of the potential future, then go back and say we're valuing these companies at like a PE ratio of 40, and if they go down a bunch, you're like, see, PE ratios don't matter because it should be even smaller. You're kind of you're trying to play both sides. And
Wait, what did I say? PE ratio should be small. That's not what I said.
well, you're saying there's some bubble. And if you look at
Uh-huh.
many stocks,
Mhm.
they're not highly valued based on
Mhm.
even PE ratio. So
Mhm.
you're trying to say that they're a bubble and they're going to pop and they're going to decrease 30% in value or something. And I don't necessarily see that. I see most of these high-tech
Okay.
companies don't have super high valuations. You can certainly argue PE ratios of Nvidia, Microsoft. I don't think Apple as much or Google are certainly could be elevated like 30%,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
but
I mean,
market
look,
wide.
I literally just told you. I literally just told you that you're too focused on P ratios, and your comeback to me is all about P ratios.
So what should I be focused on? You want to focus
Mm.
on the market wide fact that the stocks are concentrated? That's just not that interesting. It's just not causal necessarily. It's a correlated factor that you go and cherry pick out of 7 recessions. So many times when you had this concentration, stocks go down. This is like very sparse data. It's just not that convincing. So what do you
Okay.
have? What do you have?
I got more, but I'm not done shorting yet. I'm not done. Not done shorting yet.
So you won't tell us what financial assessment you're going to use? You host this space, and you're not going
Can
to
I
tell
try?
anyone actually how you assess?
Okay, listen. We do a freemium business strategy here. Okay, you got some things for free, you get some things for paid, and you get some things never. So that's the way it works. And I think you got a lot. But the thing is, like, you still haven't learned. So what's the point of telling you anyway? You're still talking about P ratios. Anyway, Meta.
First off, when you're asking about like NVIDIA specifically, I would ask from a technical perspective, do you agree now that transformers are likely the path forward and that you don't need generalized graphics processors anymore?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I don't think we're that different on Nvidia. I think your take is you're lukewarm on Nvidia or short. Like I'm not bullish on Nvidia, so like I don't disagree with that take. I'm just talking about market wide.
Oh,
Not
market wide. I thought you were talking about NVIDIA short specifically. Never mind.
yeah.
No, we're talking market wide. Market wide.
Well, don't you think if NVIDIA goes down and if other big names are inflated, and maybe this is not Yaman's position, but my position is if crypto's inflated, it's generally a good sign that there's excess money in the system. It's like people taking out large credit cards and spending money, and then the debt comes due.
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree that the market's overheated, and that's why I would not be, when we get into investment strategies, but I'm very hedged. Let's say playing for a drop. Anyways, but
I'll give you
buying.
one more indication.
Yeah.
Because I can't stand you talking endlessly. You just say nothing. You go around and around and around. And you say nothing. So just look at what happened this morning. I think what happened this morning is stunning to me. It's like this today should be studied in college classes. 20% off the world's most valuable company, or at least our stock market's most valuable company, is off by 20%. And not a single analyst changed their grading on the stock. Not a single bull, including in here, on Twitter, on CNBC, on Bloomberg, etc. Not a single investor changed their mind, even though the stock dropped 20% with 5 times the normal volume. And they all write it off as this is a one-off. That is incredible to me. That not a single person changed their mind. I don't know.
I did.
On Nvidia, I don't think so.
Well, I guess I didn't change my mind.
But you're not an
That's never
investor.
positive.
You're not. Yeah, you weren't positive. But I don't know a person who was positive on Nvidia and that changed their mind after in the last couple of weeks here with DeepSeek, which I think is a very material event.
I think the moment that was material was when Llama and Gemma came out. Honestly, I think people are freaking out because it's China, but it's no different than previous open source models.
No, because Llama and Gemini. Did you say Gemini?
Gemma.
Gemma. Okay. Well, I don't think it's an open source, closed source thing here. I think it's more about the fact that they were able to do this without using NVIDIA's cutting edge computers. That's one piece of it. And also able to, do algorithmic breakthroughs that say maybe you don't need that many GPUs. Maybe the infrastructure build out is a little excessive, like you've been saying. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah, but I'm
that's
just
why the
saying
stock
that
is off 20%.
I'm saying that Llama and Gemma showed us that you didn't need the large compute and you could use other chips already. People have been using it on their
Didn't
machines. Yeah, yeah.
Meta has been buying tens of billions of dollars of Nvidia, right?
Yeah, but that's because they're using it on the training side. I don't think anybody can make the claim that DeepSeek doesn't need GPUs or some kind of compute on the training side.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's saying that, it's just a
Well, they're
bad
saying
story.
they're saying H800s, right?
I mean,
H800s, and I think Gavin Baker said A100s as well. They had it.
the claim, well, A100s are not banned. So yeah, I think those are the two
Right.
that can claim. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's put it this
So
way.
if they're not using
Some-
H100s, and that's where Nvidia is making its money, and these guys can compete with ChatGPT and Gemini and everybody else without using where Nvidia makes its money, that's, I think, part of the problem here for Nvidia stock.
I think the CEO of Scale AI is not a unreasonable person. He's very plugged in to every AI company out there. Almost everyone is probably one of his customers.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that 50,000, roughly 15% of all H100s went to Singapore, and we have no idea what company is using them. And coincidentally, a company in China happens to make these advances. I like to believe Occam's razor is probably at play.
Now, he didn't say anything about Singapore in that interview, I think. Isn't that correct?
He said it since. I'll find it for you.
He said it since. Okay. In a tweet or what?
Give me a moment.
Okay. Machine?
I just, Nvidia, to be honest, is not that interesting now as an investment, one way or the other, in my opinion. I think we talked about it a year ago, where I believe you were bearish or not interested, Yaman, a year ago, and that was a time where it was very clear the earnings growth was going to project out to kind of around where it is today, and where it was at like $400, pre-split, that it was at least going to double, which it ultimately tripled. And now you look at it, and if you look at the last, and you're going to hate this, of course, because I talk about earnings, how much they earn and growth. Now they're earning like 80 cents a quarter, $3, a little over $3 for the year if you annualize it out. But it's flatline. It's starting to flatline, and you're going to argue. We're going to quibble over: is it going to go up a little bit or start going down a little bit? I think both are possible for all these reasons.
Are you
And
talking about Tesla or Nvidia?
Nvidia. And
okay. Wait, why? When was I bearish that it doubled?
Oh, you were bearish even a year ago in Nvidia.
No,
Absolutely.
no,
Absolutely. No. Oh my gosh.
Listen.
He wasn't bearish. He was saying he was hyped.
Listen.
To be clear, there's a difference.
Listen. This is really frustrating. Good communication requires good listening. Okay. I don't know how you're still married, but I wrote an article in March. I said sell the stock. All right. And but I only started shorting it in, I think, November or December of last year. So obviously, if a stock is fairly valued and there are other stocks that are undervalued, there's no reason to hold that stock. But if a stock gets too overvalued, then it may make sense to short the stock. So go ahead.
I'm not saying a year ago you were not trying to say short the stock like it was massively overvalued. You just weren't interested in it at that time, even though it was on a massive growth trajectory where it still was undervalued, quite clearly, in my opinion. And now we're at a point where it's at, you can argue fairly valued, overvalued a bit, etc. My point is, its earnings are not something where it's like a annualized P ratio of 35 to 40. There's downside there. If the earnings flatline, for sure, like it'll definitely go down quite a bit, but it's not like a 50% drop that's going to come unless earnings
Yeah,
actually
I don't know.
start going down.
I think this company made. I think the threat from. I think there's existential risk here for this company. Meta.
I shared in the comments below. I don't know who the person who I'm quoting is on the tweet, just to be clear, but there are other people who have also shared screenshots from NVIDIA's earnings reports. I have not personally gone through it directly, but it does, in their earnings report, show roughly 15% of their sales went to Singapore.
Okay.
So you're right. It wasn't the Scale AI CEO.
Right.
It was two reliable sources, and I'm saying you can put it together pretty easily.
Okay.
Otherwise, the question is who's using those GPUs? Sorry.
Well, my take on this whole, they're lying, or they're doing this and that. They're using H100s, they're not using H100s. I think a lot of this is just wishful thinking on American players' parts.
I don't agree, because if they have achieved it with far less compute than they actually needed, then the question would be, why release it for free?
I don't know. Why does Google
wouldn't you
release?
just compete?
Why does Google release these things free, or Meta?
I don't think they release it for free. They have ad networks that benefit off of it, and they have cloud services that benefit off of it.
Mm-hmm. But they can still keep it proprietary and benefit off of it, right?
That's what they do, though, right? They don't open source the popular models, and it's like a freemium model to get you onto paying for the thing. You can look at the earnings. They both have made more money.
You mean ChatGPT and Gemini?
I'm not sure if ChatGPT is profitable.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think they
yeah.
are. I don't think they are.
Yeah. But Google Cloud in their last earnings had earnings. You can look at-
But Gemini is not profitable, I'm guessing.
I don't think they break that out. I can't see how it would be. But if you get more cloud customers to use a particular API, that's beneficial.
Mm.
If you're going to use an AI company's APIs to do stuff and you're a tech company, you probably want to co-locate your cloud offerings to that AI.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has been the largest cloud winner for a long time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft is trying to win people over with OpenAI, and they're the benefitor from the OpenAI stuff. So I would argue Microsoft and Google are the winners here.
Okay. So are we all on the same page about Microsoft kind of tightening the purses here with GPU acquisition?
He said he was good for 80 billion. That's still pretty good, right?
Well, it's 80 billion for this fiscal year. So 2 quarters already done. So he's just saying we're on track for 80 billion, which is known information. But I don't
Wait.
think they're going to grow another 50% next year. Do you
What do you
agree with
mean?
that?
What do you mean 2 quarters already done? Do they have a strange accounting cycle or something?
June to June.
Got
Yeah.
you.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you were here, but that's what I highlighted in the space when we first made the announcement, and all the headlines said 80 billion 2025. It's 2025 fiscal year, and I could tell who actually read this statement versus who read the headlines, and everybody read the headlines. But if you actually read the statement, they say we're on track this fiscal year to spend 80 billion, and they're already spending 20 billion a quarter. So there's no change there. So that tells me 0%, basically flat year over year. I think Meta is going to increase it a little bit year over year, but these 50% growth rates, I just don't see how it's going to happen for Nvidia.
One, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, I don't believe in this position. One could argue that as robotics takes off, more companies will be buying their inference chips. My counter argument would be that inference chip is not going to cost $40,000, and you'd have to sell a lot of them to keep the growth rate.
Right. Exactly. And we talked about that as well because they came out with one, right? So revenue grew year over year in the last quarter for Nvidia, 94%. Before that, July quarter, 122%. Before that, 262%. Before that, 265%. So you're already seeing their revenue growth declining very substantially quarter after quarter for the last 4 quarters, maybe more. And it's going to continue to slow down very, very fast. And in the last quarter, they also were underwhelming on their margins forecast too. So, and that was before we started hearing from Microsoft. We started hearing about the rift between Microsoft and OpenAI, and the likely reason being Sam Altman probably wants to spend trillions of dollars buying GPUs and Microsoft doesn't because they can't, because they have declining cash balance that we've been saying here for a while. So who's going to replace Microsoft? It's not going to be Amazon. They're doing their own Trainium. It's not going to be Google. They're doing their TPUs version after version. I don't think it's going to be Tesla because they don't have the money to buy tens of billions of dollars of GPUs. Is it going to be Trump? I don't know. What do you think?
Unless it's the government, I don't see it happening. You already know that. We're in strong agreement there.
Right.
I do want to make a statement just because I feel like it's important to be on the record on these things. The only thing that makes me feel like I should hedge my statement on DeepSeek right now, and this is zero research, and I should learn my lesson from the Jan LeCun situation, is Andrew Ng, who was one of my professors, who I respect very, very highly. He's one of the leading people in AI. I think he doesn't get enough credit, but he thinks DeepSeek is a big game changer. He knows a lot about China and the Chinese market. He helped start up, like, Baidu's. He helped start up like the AI divisions in a lot of large companies. If he is making that statement, and I have not known him to speak poorly, there might be something to it. It's enough of a statement that I will go read more clearly. I'm just going to say that.
Okay. Do you have time tomorrow to talk about it? And then just send me what you're reading so I can be informed before we discuss.
I'll send you what I'm reading, but I'm getting my scuba certification right now, so like I don't actually have time to read during the day. So there are a couple of days that I give me the weekend.
Okay. All right.
I'll go ahead and post on my profile. I don't know how to send you. I'll tag you things I'm reading. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. I was going to ask you one more thing. Any thoughts on the new Model Y or anything? Or
Oh my God, I
earnings?
just made a big mistake. It's not Andrew Ng, it's Andrew Yang. I take everything back. I take everything back. I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
That's a huge mistake. Sorry. That's very embarrassing.
ACDC?
Got a question for Meta. Meta, you just said that this is something that actually is positive somewhat for, I think it was Microsoft and Google. Those are the two that are kind of down more compared to like Meta and Amazon. So just looking at all the hyperscalers, how do you think, what's your perspective on, from knowing what you do so far on DeepSeek, that which ones do you think will positively have an impact and which ones will have a negative impact? And also any insight on Oracle from your side, being from the Silicon Valley?
I'm not going to speak to stocks directly. I want to be very, very clear because I feel like that's a very stock oriented question. I think in terms of engineering success and having products, those companies have products that they're selling, right? Like if you create an app, let's just use a simple thing. Like if you make a app, let's say you have a dating app, right? So you go on the dating app, you create a profile, you upload a bunch of stuff, you write stuff. You have an advertising app. You go in there, you have to create an image, you have to write a bunch of stuff, and then you have to write an ad. You have an event app. You have to create an app. You have to write a bunch of things. Every single time people have to sit there and be creative and figure out how to pitch something, they have to add images, they have to do anything. There's an opportunity to streamline the onboarding process from your users and make it super easy for them to join by using AI and having AI assistant do it. Those AI API calls could be done on device theoretically. If it's good enough, that benefits Apple and Android theoretically, or and Samsung, all those others, or maybe in some of those scenarios, you get even better quality for like advertising scenarios and maybe writing a book scenarios or things like that. Those go to a cloud. Those apps that figure out implementations for those things are going to be co-located with the cloud providers because the data is going to be there. So that is why I'm saying the real creators of pickaxes and shovels are those companies. And that's why they tend to stay in the top companies in tech, because they make pickaxes and shovels.
Okay. Meta, any thoughts on the new Model Y?
I'm sad it doesn't have steer by wire. It's another reflection of Tesla not being able to keep up with their innovation. They've walked away from the unbox method. Like if you remember when that first came out, I was so excited because it finally felt like a step in the direction that JP talked about way back in the day about like cars are like Lego blocks. I'm very disappointed since the highest high I had on the manufacturing was when they presented the unbox method and steer by wire, and ever since then it's just been disappointed. And the timing could be a correlation or it could be reality. I just think they've lost their vision on the and the motivation that they used to have on the manufacturing.
Mm-hmm. What do you?
I want to be wrong. I want to be very wrong. I'm hoping that they come out with a robotaxi and it's steer by wire and it's done with unbox. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not.
Right. I don't think robotaxis is coming anytime soon. What do you? Okay. Any earnings related expectation you want to talk about? I feel like it's a little too short term to ask about, but
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna skip.
okay. What about Grok 3? So that's supposed to be coming out in the next few days or a couple of weeks or whatever. What do you expect? What do you think is going to be the sentiment around Grok 3 when it comes out?
I think the bar is too high for all models. They have to perform, and LMSys has proved to be a better and harder testing ground than everything else. Granted, you get like very specific kind of users on LMSys. Obviously, people are self-selecting to go there. But if companies started making LMSys more easily accessible, or LMSys became an app, theoretically it could be more diverse and representative use cases. But the problem with that is right now it's run by Berkeley and it's a neutral party. If it becomes a corporate entity, you have problems. So there are, I think, many very clear ways that the things are going to develop. I would say if there's anybody out there who has a extremely good process of keeping people tight-lipped, it's the people that work at Helmsys. You got to give them like insane chops and credit for that, because I can't remember a single model that has leaked from LMSys, and LMSys gets every model before anybody else gets it. They see the models that nobody sees that never launch because they allow people to test their models privately before they ship. And if you don't beat people in LMSys, I don't think you've actually won, personally. I think you could argue there should be more competitive spaces within LMSys, and they are being created, right? Like they're making a web view creation, they're doing other ones. I think that's the way to have fair competition. And in theory, companies could start sharing a percentage of their data with LMSys for the analysis to be done in a neutral way. If we really want to have fair competition and we want to be good about how we spend our resources as a humanity, I think that's an extremely good model, not just for AI, but for many things. So very big props to Berkeley for keeping that running.
Okay, so you don't expect much out of Graph 3 then, sounds like.
That was a fancy way of saying that.
Yeah.
Unless they have like some innovation, right? Everybody's doing the same thing and expecting to somehow be better because they somehow somewhat tune the data better, but that's not reality, right? There's only one or two, like I would argue 2, 3 maximum companies out there that are writing innovative papers, and that's it.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on what you mean by less need for human feedback with these latest developments from DeepSeek?
Yeah, I need to convince myself that's true. Just to be clear, I want to be blunt. I'm not fully convinced. That's a personal opinion. Let's take it at their word, right? So, I'm gonna try and explain this for practice on my own end. So, please give me feedback if I'm not explaining it well. Deal?
Sounds good.
Okay. So one way to think about a neural net, we've discussed many different ways, but one way to picture a neural net is if I had a piece of paper and I took a red marker and I took a blue marker and I put a whole bunch of dots on the paper, and then you took the red marker and you drew like a shape with curves. Let's just say circles for now, for simplicity, around the kind of center point of mass of all the red points and the kind of center point of all the blue points. And then I took a green marker and I put a dot somewhere. And I asked you, what color should this green dot be, blue or red? One way to figure out what color it should be is based on what cluster it's closest to, whether it's blue or red. This is the basic underlying of how clustering works and how AI does clustering, right? And we can talk about how it's applied another time for generative, but that's basically how underlying of AI works. And then it just expands to n-area spaces, but those are hard to picture. So let's just stick to the piece of paper and think about it this way. Most models, the way they work is they say when we do training, we have a goal. So we want the red quadrant to be 0, 0. We want the blue quadrant to be 10, 10. And as you bring in training data and various other things. You say, okay, this is good data and this is bad data based on what's helping you get to that particular goal. That's RLHF in a sense. It's not explicitly set like those coordinates, but that's effectively what you're doing by having humans steer it. Humans have problems. Like prompts are generated by one set of people, the verification is done by another set of people. Nuance gets lost. The word back has two different meanings, like to go back and the body part. So there's a lot of homonyms, there's a lot of like problems in language. It's as soon as you have like telephone game happening, you're gonna have like a lot of issues. So in theory, with GRPO, they say, well, we know that's happening, we know that's problematic. So instead of assuming that all the time we should move the data closer to the goal, sometimes we should move the goal closer to the data. And that is pretty novel. It does mean you have less control over where you end up, theoretically.
Okay. So, but how does that end up with needing less human feedback?
Oh, because you need the human feedback to be able to say, should the data be included or not included?
Okay. So can you put it to maybe like more practical terms? Let's say for FSD. So instead of having, hundreds of thousands of people giving you feedback daily using FSD, would you need tens of thousands or just thousands? Or
I see what you're saying. No, you still need the users. The labelers. Remember, Tesla talked a lot about they used to have all these labelers, and then they had auto labelers. It's the labelers you need less of, not the users. You might even need more users theoretically. So let's take an example of let's take the red light, right turn example, because I think that's the easy one to understand. Let's say nobody thought about the fact that there's a no turn on red sign. Somehow we totally missed that. I'm just using an obvious example. And we just see everybody is driving, and a ton of people, we keep having conflicts where we have perceived loss because the user does something that disagrees with what we were going to do in shadow mode. And it's always at these signs that have a no red turn. Oh, sorry. Let's say we are at the stage where we say you can always turn right on red. And we're seeing all these users who disengage every time we're about to turn red at these no right turn on red signs. The model might pick up emergently that this sign is the reason why that's happening. Today, you would have to collect lots of examples. Sorry, not today. Pre-GRPO, you'd have to collect lots of examples of that, see lots of disengagements happening, and then a human auto labeler would have to come along and be like, "Oh, it's because of this." And then a data expert would have to come along and say, "Let me build a data set and make sure to say, let me collect examples where this is a good thing. Let me collect examples where it's not a good thing." So the hot dog, not a hot dog examples, again, clustering to say when it should and when it shouldn't do the right turn on red. And then they will train it, and then they will test it and validate it, and then they will ship it, and then they'll be like, oh crap, now it's refusing to turn red on a bunch of places where it shouldn't because it has a no jaywalking sign, and it's just looking for the no something sign instead of like the no right turn on red. It's ignoring the time, whatever those things are. Now they have to go back and they have to go and do more nuance and nuance and nuance. So the goal setting, that cycle theoretically can be removed if you have sufficiently large amount of data and you let the goal move.
Okay.
That make it clear or no?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it's basically like if thousands of users are doing it, it's probably okay.
Yeah, I got you. So you said you might need more users. Okay.
Yeah, you would need more users because you would have to have
Right.
more confidence for the edge cases.
Right. But you can learn from edge cases much quicker.
Theoretically, in a more autonomous way. Yeah, theoretically.
Well, are we going to see this with
That's
Tesla,
the
you
part
think?
I'm saying is novel. I want to make it very clear, right? Because I am throwing a lot of shade on a lot of things. That part I think is novel, and I don't think the people that develop that part are necessarily the ones making the other claims.
Okay. So do you think Tesla will be able to incorporate this methods and accelerate the pace at which it solves edge cases?
It's non-trivial to implement. They may be able to. However, I don't know that it's necessarily better out the gate because chatbots don't make people die. Cars do. You need to be able to explain why it did what it did, and the explainability goes away when you go with GRPO.
Okay.
So I personally, if I was Ashok, or I was talking to Ashok about this, or if he was listening, I would just say, don't veer off course. Stick to when you find something that's working, run to the end of that thing, learn what's causing it to be plateauing, and then pick a new course. There's always gonna be like new fancy shiny toys. You don't want to just keep switching. You need to, because it could be the case that like 5 of these different approaches would all solve FSD. If you keep switching to a new approach, you're never going to solve it. You have to kind of stick to one until it's no longer yielding results.
Got it. All right. That's very good. I think that's lots to kind of, I'm going to listen to the space again myself and take some notes, and then I'll read the couple of papers that you send, and then we can continue this discussion. It's been 3 hours today. Thank you very much to those who contributed. Meta, thank you, ACDC and Wes and others as well. And I have 2 subscribers now, 2 new subscribers. Thank you, Chris, for subscribing, and also Henry. Thank you very much for subscribing as well. So now we have 5 subscribers. That's amazing. All right, see y'all, everybody. Thank you, and chat with you all next time. Take care.